Calling to order the special council meeting of Saturday, December 7th. Please call the roll.
Mr. Knoll?
Here.
Ms. Atruk? Ms. Weltman?
Here.
Ms. Godes? Here. Mr. Lemay?
Here.
Mr. Gentili?
Here.
Dr. Wong?
Good morning, everybody. Appreciate everyone being here on a Saturday. And welcome to our audience. We are going to begin this morning's session with a brief or a necessary executive session. We will probably, I guess we'll adjourn to my office.
I guess, yeah.
So
Yeah.
since we have visitors here with us this morning, so could we have a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss the appointment and compensation of city officials?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Knoll?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Godes? Yes. Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentili?
Yes.
Thank you. Folks, thank you for your patience, and we will be back as soon as we can. have adjourned from our executive session, and we are back in session of the special council meeting and reconvened. The first agenda item this morning is it is time for insurance again. We will obviously be discussing it. Joe, you want to lead it off?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Something that we do annually because it's always a one-year gig for the whole entire insurance for the city. Council will receive a sheet that showed what it was for the last year's. The column that talks about annualized is had we had the identical same equipment when we got the numbers for.
Excuse me, I don't have whatever document you're talking about.
The one that went out yesterday, here, I've got a copy for you.
Do you have an extra one?
Yeah.
Thank you.
In talking about the insurance, really the other player in town is Travelers. Their numbers in various other communities were coming in much higher. We've had, working with Selective as the main carrier, along with the ancillaries of Hanover, Cincinnati, and Travelers for our cyber. We've had incredible success working with Selective on a couple of the cases where they were actively defending us. Cyber also, we started off several years ago with a cyber insurance at $750,000. We're bumping that up to $1 million. And we also tweaked the property and boiler numbers up 5% to account for inflation. And we also tweaked a little bit our inland marine. And overall, it's going up about 5%.
Joe, what's boiler? Is it literally the boiler? Like,
It is boiler. It is, I mean,
Like-
there's boilers throughout the city.
there is, okay.
Oh, yeah,
I did not know that.
yeah.
Okay.
This is, Wykert's still our broker for all this,
Wicker, yeah,
or Wickert for all of these?
yes.
Okay.
Have they actually shopped it for us in the past few years at all, the policy?
They
Not that-
shopped it like 3 years ago. It's 3, I think. And it's a ton of work to end up getting their numbers because you're basically starting from scratch because obviously Selective already has the numbers. We still every year true up different things for Selective to take a look at. But based on the numbers that Wickard was seeing for Travelers in various other communities, he said they won't be able to touch this number. And obviously with insurance skyrocketing, I was part of a group called VEG, which is a collection of various police communities. For VEG, for police liability alone, jumped $9,000 just for VEG.
Just for law enforcement part?
Just for law enforcement. Because other carriers, I think it was Euclid Insurance, they backed out of doing police liability. So there's less and less people in the game.
Mhm.
And for us, thank God, Selective, whereas in the past, they really didn't do police liability. They stepped up to start doing police liability. They did it for VEG and they're obviously doing it for the city. And on law enforcement, they have not really a change at all,
So
which is great.
Selective is on all of these, the top 7 policies?
Right.
Is the underwriter, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And in terms of Selective's financial status and their creditworthiness and
Oh, yeah. They're the,
there's any concern and any change in that
No.
we should have concern about? So
No.
that their ratings at the various rating agencies continue to be
High.
AAA or?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Joe, what's the inception and annualized columns in 23, 24?
we have certain pieces of equipment last year when we did this. In '24, when we replaced vehicles, they are newer vehicles versus the older. So I had them say, well, what if we have today, if we would have had that last year, how much it would change? Because that makes it more of an apples and apples.
Okay, so the annualized column is the one we compare with the renewal.
Correct.
Okay, okay, got it.
Joe, remind me what inland marine covers.
Anything, a lot of stuff that you could drive, but they're truly not vehicles. Front end loader, backhoes.
Why do we call it inland?
The cabin cruiser.
That's what the.
Why do we call it inland?
We
marine?
don't.
That's
The
what the
industry
insurance.
So,
industry
so
calls it.
non-auto vehicles.
Right. It's not the 6 or 7 boats that we have over there. So
Non-auto
It's
vehicles.
just-
I ask you this about every year. and I
yeah,
just
but
never
it's a
remember.
bizarre thing, and that's the
Okay.
category that the insurance.
So that
put
would
it
be
under.
ambulances, fire trucks.
No, those are vehicles.
So, okay, so what, front end loaders, so non-road vehicles.
Well,
Yeah.
for the
Yes.
scooters are on the road, but they're not considered vehicles. They're part of this.
They don't have, a so if
They
it
don't
doesn't
have
have a state registered tag, is that the dividing line?
Yeah, I would say that's probably closer to the dividing line, correct?
Yeah,
Yes. So we have 7
Forklifts.
scooters, a front end loader, backhoe, tractors,
Okay,
basically an off-road vehicle.
non-off-road or non-licensed is the best way, is the easiest way to think about it?
That's my
Any
opinion.
exceptions to that?
No,
Okay,
because they can all do damage at some point.
sure, yeah. But so that's just out of the purview of auto. Those guys don't, they're not experts in back-end loaders and therefore, or whatever, right? Yeah, okay. It's a good reminder. Inland marine.
I know.
Okay.
That's why it's inland marine, not.
Not
Marine.
seashore marine.
So if we had boats, that were where it would go. If we did have boats.
I would assume.
Don't tell them about the boats, Joe.
What about the helicopter?
Okay. Well, it's just, my general reading is it's a hard market for insurance. And in general reading of this, and that, so these increases don't shock me. In fact, there's some of them I think are more modest than I thought they might be. So these numbers don't, the extent of the increase doesn't, give me
We
an
generally have a very good claims experience,
issue.
and I think that helps us with the carrier keeping things down.
And just a reminder, so our coverage is the same with the exception, you said there was an increase in what? In
Cyber-
increase in coverage.
cyber.
In crime.
Okay. So it's a little bit
um,
more enhanced policy.
Yes.
Slightly,
And then, of course, the values of some of the equipment we also put up too.
sure.
Same insurance, but higher value, a little bit more money.
So on public, it'd be great, just Joe, next year to have a column on this, like limits. Just put 1 million or whatever
They're
it is.
scattered all over the board.
I understand, but so like,
Like under property or inland marine, or even public official.
right,
It's depending on what's going on, so the limits change, but I could get something.
just an aggregate.
You've got-
Is it a
You've got
million
3 of them
dollars?
down here, just if you could add the other ones. You've got inland marines, 1,239,000. Crime is 1 million. How much, if you put the
Yeah,
property down there?
it'll be more detailed.
Yeah, but it's a ballpark number. It doesn't have to be, a precise number of,
We can handle, we can
Six-
handle.
Yeah.
it.
$6,422,33. It's,
Why that's important is if, obviously you can get a lower premium if you change your limits. And kind of for council to say, okay, higher premium, but we raised it to 1 million, to me, that's fully justified. And so just having what you did below on these categories would be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why I
Particularly
asked
if it
about the crime,
changes.
that's why I asked about the crime cover,
But,
yeah.
whatever.
I
increase in
wouldn't
coverage.
want to wait till next year to see it. I'd like to, not to disapprove of this today, but I'd like to see that
Okay,
added to the sheet in,
that'll work.
'Cause I know,
maybe by the
yeah,
next meeting in December.
sometimes in the past, we've negotiated like, okay, we can have a trade-off on coverage and premium, because there was a point where the market went really crazy in insurance, and I think we did a little bit of that maybe.
Well, we can, we need to decide how much risk we can take on,
Yes.
given our financial position.
Right.
And that's,
Right.
that's something that we should be able to look, we should get to look at.
And no change in terms of Wickert or Wickert, sorry, right?
Yep.
No change there. Do we have the same rep that we've
Yep.
had for a while? Okay, so he's very familiar with us and
She,
she knows what's going on. Okay,
yeah, and I mean, and the team that, I mean, we've worked with, the people in our office and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
that's helpful.
Do they cover us for, health insurance as well?
No.
No.
No?
No.
Who does that?
Medical Mutual.
Medical Mutual. But Medical Mutual is a carrier.
Oh, you mean the agent? He doesn't mean the
The agent,
underwriter. He wants to know
the
the agent.
Oh, we
Fidelity.
work with a group called Fidelity.
Oh, okay, I'm familiar with them.
And I don't know how, I don't want you guys to have to do internal work to prepare it. But if they have all our numbers, I'm not saying for this year, because I don't want to hold anything up, but maybe they could shop it. I mean, that they're making money off of us having a policy just for our due diligence, not because we really want to change, but because they're our agent and that's what they are
Right,
charged
but
with doing.
to shop it, I mean, it was analyzed whether it should be shopped if Travelers was even gonna be in the ballpark and they weren't.
Okay.
So that's why we said, well, if that's, it's an unnecessary and we're going up 5%.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled with the fact that we're going up
I
5%.
mean, I don't want you guys to have extra work. I just think
Yeah.
that
But the point is, every once in a while, we should,
Sure,
yeah,
Right.
because we always did that.
and that's what we did.
At my company, every 3 or 4 years, we just shop the whole program to make sure that nothing's gone
that's what I'm
crazy.
saying. And you,
Yeah.
and I don't want, that should be on them, not, they
Oh,
have, they have what we have now. They know how we're insured now. So they would
Right.
just a similar
but it will
policy.
add a bunch of work, but yeah, I don't have a problem doing that.
Okay. So what we would do is entertain a motion to enter into the contract with Wickard for the 2024-25 GL and property insurance program.
So moved. Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Newell?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Godick? Yes. Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentili?
Yes.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to ordinance 2024-43. This is the appropriations ordinance and for the current expenditures of the city of Pepper Pike. It's the budget that has been out for about 3 weeks now, since mid-November. And we're ready to have a conversation about that.
I have a number of questions that I'd
Sure.
like to pass out.
So Joe, this should be the final true up for 2024. This budget here, these changes.
No, this is 2025.
That's for 2025.
It's,
Oh, I misread it. Okay, all right.
That mirrors the 2025 column in the budget.
Got it. Okay.
Joe, preliminarily, is there anything that you want to add, or should you prefer to go to the questions? And we have our department heads here, obviously, to respond to council.
Okay. So we're not moving on this right now. We're moving on, we're going to look at.
We're looking at the 5-year,
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
particularly the 25
Okay.
budget as well.
The attachment ties to the 2025. column.
2025. Got it. Okay. So to the extent we, okay, make changes today, we need to change this. Right?
I made 10, I don't know.
Correct.
And Sheila is circulating something called proposed questions. Is this your document? Tony?
Yes,
Okay. Joe, do you have this?
Yeah, Tony handed it to me.
Okay.
Well, just a point of order in how we go through this. As I looked at it, I wanted to kind of hit the assumptions first, and maybe you do that in here, Tony, I don't know.
I didn't.
And then page through the document, and I know you pick up various things here.
My analysis here is the 2025 operating budget, which just is 2025.
Right.
I don't go on for the other years. This is just trying to
I think-
understand
I think we should focus on 25.
what's happening between 2024 and 2025.
Okay. Okay, it's just a matter of, do you want to page through the thing and pick up your points? Because your points are going to go to different points and then we're gonna have to go back in and pick points
I,
just methodically. I just wanted to go page by page.
the analysis that I prepared and shared with everybody yesterday picks out what I found to be the anomalies between the assumptions and the numbers.
Yeah.
So that's mostly what I've done, is where the assumptions and the numbers don't coincide. So looking for an explanation on that.
And I have a bunch of those too.
And I think I hit all of the big ones, so we can go through this, or we can go through it page by page.
Well, just,
Doesn't matter.
I mean, I have comments on a page by page basis, and once we get to the back, we know we've hit everything.
Well, this is in order of page by
What
page.
else you got that?
All right, so why don't we hit Tony's questions as we're going through it page by page? How's that?
A perfect answer, Mr. Mayor. Can we hit the assumptions first?
Sure.
So Joe, just, I'm looking at your latest version of the assumptions, just to make sure I understand them, because these obviously play throughout the budget in
Right.
various places. So just let me understand. So revenues on real estate taxes first. 5% increase. Oh, but just get back to my earlier point. I misunderstood this. Are we going to have a year-end meeting for some other
Yes.
24 budget true-ups?
Yes.
Mhm.
So we'll need to have that. That's the
Is that
December
the
31st or the 18th? Can we get
30th.
the 30th?
Yes.
Okay. So we can't get that done on the 18th? It's just not,
No.
you don't have enough numbers?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
So we should plan on the 30th meeting is, we're gonna need to have it.
right.
Yeah.
And we thank you for that.
Okay. So just.
State auditor thanks you for that.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay. I was hopeful that we could get those done early and not have to have the 30th meeting, but okay, we have to.
Right, and it won't be long.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. It's just a few true ups, right, for 2024?
Yeah. It's a true up.
So real estate taxes, just so I understand, Joe, budgeted 5% increase in 2025. So 2025 is a reappraisal year,
Yes, section.
sexennial.
Yeah,
All right, so got that. And then 1% is just conservative assumptions for the rest of 26, 27.
right. Normally, we budget 311, 311.
Mhm.
And because, and I don't know exactly where they're shaken out. I mean, there were quite a few properties that got big increases, and then there's the chance
Sure.
for people to, fight those
Mhm.
increases. So for now, I just conservatively put in 5.
Okay, so just how you drafted it, I'm gonna say 5% increase in 25, but the 1% increase in 26 and 27. Am I reading that right?
Correct.
And then 26 and 27, and then 28,
It's the triennial increase.
Triennial, so budget
I
with
did
it.
3.
3% increase with 29 budgeted at 1%.
Right.
Okay.
1% over the 3% increase in 29
Yeah.
or 28.
Yeah.
And so that council is aware, a matter, in addition to pension issues pending in front of the state legislature, this will not be a lame duck issue like the pensions, but the property tax valuation methodology is being totally reexamined and probably changed by the state legislature.
Can you give us the very short version of that? Is it
That
possible?
was the short version.
Okay.
They are there is an unhappiness in Columbus regarding valuations, and they're looking at it.
Is this political because of the recent spike in home
It's very
values?
political.
Okay. All right. That's what's driving it though, as
I
opposed to
believe so.
some
Well,
overarching.
all tax issues are political in many
Right.
ways, but
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
it's
So are they
political.
looking at the valuations? They're not looking at our ability to levy. I mean, for us, it's pretty limited here anyway.
They're looking at the valuation methods.
Interesting. Okay. And then Joe, explain rollback again to me in terms of the mechanics
That's
of it.
money that's not paid for by the property owner that the state makes up for.
Okay. And you just track that.
Correct.
Okay. In terms of the increases, you're assuming it just matches.
Pardon?
You're assuming it matches the increases you have in,
It's pretty close.
pretty close, okay. And then my next assumption is income tax revenue budget with a 0.5% increase per year. Just looking at that on the income tax line, it seems to me as an assumption that's fair, as I think the post-COVID variability seems to have settled out in my view. I'm looking at, so in 21, it was 8.3, 8.8, 8.6, 8.7. So it's kind of flattish
Mhm.
in terms of that. And so I guess I'm just making that comment that a modest 1% increase seems in line with the trends, and we're not going to see the
Right.
out of COVID, we saw these huge bounces around.
Right.
So it seems like it's, and you, I guess I'm asking, you would agree that it's kind of leveled out and we're at a quasi steady state
Correct.
from an income tax. Okay.
So I have a,
I'll simply toss in the, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
No,
but
go ahead.
Before you pass on from the subject, I want to interject. Again, although the whole municipal income tax issue seemed to have subsided for the last year and a half in Columbus and is not on the 824 docket, it is anticipated that municipal income tax on a state level is going to be back on the state legislative docket in 25.
Okay. Nothing to do about that now, though. Just know that we should look at it.
Just so you know, it's out there on the horizon. We don't know what they're going to do.
Okay.
so you were talking about income tax, so this time for, my question is, the assumptions state a 0.5% increase every year, but the budget shows a 0.2% decrease from 24 to 25. So I'm
Right, because
confused about that.
I believe we're gonna be underneath that budget number for 24.
Underneath the budget number. Wait a second.
We're going to be beneath 8.7 budgeted number?
Yeah.
And what's your projection right now?
Wait a second. Hold on. Municipal income tax. The 2024 projection is 8,750.
Yep,
So is that the budget or is that what we believe now?
that's the budget.
Oh,
So year to date,
Okay.
year to date, it's only 7,074.
Yeah, I mean,
That's with 2 months to go.
right, we're not talking about a whole heck of a lot of money.
Yeah.
But, we had the November and then we got December and I just stay conservative.
So what, I'm
So-
looking at the last council report on the function that's
Uh-huh.
through October. And so what's that? It was 7,074 through October. So with November, December, where do you think we're going to be?
I mean,
Oh, you've got November already, I take it, right?
You're saying 2024 actual.
Yeah, 24 actual is going to be below the budgeted number of 8,750. I just want to understand how far off we're going to be on that.
in the 8.6-ish range,
8.6 off of it, 88.
like 8.6,
8.6.
almost
Year info.
8.7,
So just 150,000 less than budget.
150, yeah, maybe
Yeah,
200 depending.
Okay. So full year 8.6 rather than 8.750. So then in your forecast, you're saying it's going to be 8.371. Okay. So that's where you get that number then.
Wait, your
I'm
forecast.
sorry, it's going to be
8731.
8731.
8.731, right, for 2025.
I mean, I know it's only 100 and, well, I don't know.
So
That's
that's
a 0.5%.
That's a 0.5% increase from the actual, you're projecting out
So-
8,600. Right.
So
Okay.
I get, I'm confused a little bit because you said a 0.5% and you have a number that 8,731 comes from. I guess my issue is not updating the 2024 projections for what we really think the year end is going to be, because that makes the percentages look like they're not correct. Follow what I'm saying?
I understand, and I spotted
It's a
that.
big number.
Well, there's several places in which, I understand what you're doing, Joe, now, but there's several places in which the first year number, just like you pointed out just now, go down.
Right.
And because they're based on presumption, you have an actual number that's less than budget.
Correct.
There's 3 or 4 places I spotted the same thing.
Okay, and so my point is that where those numbers are significant numbers, it seems to me it would be better to update the 2024 projection to what we really believe is going to happen, so that there's consistency in what you're saying, in the assumptions, and then what happens.
Well,
in the
wasn't the
budget.
8,750 number, that was our start of the year projection?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It started
So
the year,
that's-
but we know it's different. And so he ran the 0.5% off of what he believes it's going to be now.
Or if we
But-
could
Which
see
is
both,
different.
if we could see
I'm
both
okay with that
numbers.
as long as, Joe, just for the future, if you just make a note on that in here. Where, not for little dollar amounts, but for a big dollar
It's
amount.
$150,000. Your definition of a big number.
Well, no,
mine
it's
is different.
150,000 different.
Right.
Right.
That's a
So,
big number. in my
I agree.
opinion. Okay.
But to the extent it's like that, he can just put a note in here that says, on those type of items, and there's 3 or 4. This is say, I've based the increase on revised full year actuals.
And I think you
For-
did that in the past.
No,
On some,
it's always been done this
it's always
way.
been exactly the prior year's
Yeah,
budget.
I mean, for the last 11 years.
The problem with, I like leaving the budget like it is, because if you adjust that number, it ripples through everything else.
No, it doesn't.
Well,
No,
in
it
terms of
Well,
cash.
we can debate this offline.
Okay, all right. But I think, Joe, the way to handle it too is just put a note in there that.
I will do that going forward.
Yeah, that.
And I would just share, I think like from the community members' point of view, it's actually good to see both numbers, where we thought we would be, where we actually think we're ending up, and then what we're planning for next year. I just think that lets you know how you did. I mean, what if we were $500,000 below? It's just good to know that information. Where are we going to be at the end of the year? We're planning a budget.
I'm just cautious about I don't want to create more work for Joe than needed.
Mhm.
If it's a
No,
material number,
If it's a material number.
right.
Yeah,
Not if
I'll
it's-
make notes.
Not if
Yeah,
it's,
if it's a big number, then yeah, we should know that.
Absolutely.
If we're off by,
of course.
yeah,
And for the big items, not for some of these smaller
yeah.
funds.
Okay. Great. Okay, then keeping going, just your last 2 sentences under revenue, Joe. A majority of the other revenue are budgeted conservatively flat. And then the last sentence, revenue of the various other funds were budgeted conservatively and based on past history. So I just want to know, between those two, are there funds in the first category, a majority, and then in the second category, revenue on various other funds? I mean, I just understand the difference between those 2 sentences and are they the same or? Because so.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't changed anyway. I mean, for the most part, how I budgeted.
So what I'm looking for is, do you need both of those sentences? Or are they pointing out a distinction that is
No.
not there?
Take out which sentence you want.
Okay, right. That's what's got me confused.
Okay,
So it's fair to say a majority of the revenue budgeted conservatively flat, which we've done with the income tax and whatnot.
right, and I've never aggressively budgeted since I've
And
been
so, but when you said various other funds,
accounts, funds,
but
accounts.
you're repeating the same concept. That's what had me confused.
Yes, okay.
All right, okay, so you could just, okay.
So I want,
They're all budgeted conservatively flat is the point.
to address interest income. So it looks like we're going to have $1.4 million in 2024. And now I understand that you use the 2024 budget, which is $600,000 below that. So it would seem to me that $1 million budget for next year is overly conservative. Looks like we're going to earn $1.4 million this year,
It's the number I'm using. Yeah.
but it seems like I'm saying overly conservative. It's conservative, but there's such a thing as overly
Yeah.
conservative.
I have a question on that and some other items. Can we finish the assumptions just real quick?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought we were going
Yeah.
page by page.
So just expenditures, your first assumption I agree with, good. Healthcare, could you talk a little bit about, because this ripples through lots of departments, that's why I'm kind of asking
Right.
globally. So it's budgeted 18, you talked a little bit about when we talked that maybe there's other consortiums. Could you speak to that just globally on healthcare?
Well, right now, we haven't settled on healthcare. We hope to settle on that by next week.
Okay,
When this was put in, we were looking at an 18% increase.
okay,
It is now down to probably 13.9 at its highest.
great.
But there are other options for us that we're gonna look at, that we're gonna roll out with the union leadership next week.
Okay,
And depending on if they wanna assume the additional risk, it could come down even more.
so you're looking at another consortium or just
Yes,
trade-offs between
in essence.
premiums and copays
Yeah.
and things like that? Okay.
Correct.
And that would be across, so you're gonna have that discussion with each of the unions, and so that.
Yes.
Yes.
That would cover most of the employees if you can get that. Okay, great. Are you gonna just be back, you'll be back at council then in our next meeting, just to report out on that and how that came out?
I could do that.
Okay, because we'll have to amend the budget, right? If it comes from 18 to 13, we'd want to put that in.
Well, this will be the high side of it, so I don't know if we have to amend.
Yeah, I mean, if we're not gonna spend it, we're not gonna spend it. And what we're not gonna know until close to the end of the year is if people are changing. Are they going from a PPO to an
Right.
HSA?
Okay, well, maybe just update us the next.
Yeah, I mean,
council
I'll
meeting.
give an update, no problem.
That'd be great. And then the next assumption, life insurance rates are flat. Okay, and that's just the normal life insurance we provide for employees that comes with the,
Correct.
and dental, okay. Okay, no questions there. So the last point I had, kind of a global assumption point is, the last sentence you have in assumptions, for all the other department expenses, past history and zero base were used, that's good. And for the years 26, 29, inflationary factor built in. So I'm wondering, the inflationary factor for the 26 to 29, what did you build into that? What was the number? Is it 1% or?
Well, it'll depend on the type of item. If you're talking rock salt, I'm putting in 5% a year.
Okay, other than rock salt?
If you're talking utilities, it's 2 or 3% a year.
Okay,
You know, a lot of them, it's 1% a year I put in.
okay. So I guess my question just globally on that, with those two exceptions and non-personnel expenses, because we talked about, wages and healthcare. So just general operating expenses, day-to-day operating expenses for all the departments. I'm wondering whether 1% is sufficiently conservative, given that we're still in a quasi-inflationary environment. And I just wanted to have the discussion about whether we should, for that category, for those categories, non-personnel, build in, 2% with those exceptions for rock salt and everything. It seems like we're still facing some inflationary pressure. And we've always budgeted conservatively, and I wonder if that will be another element of conservatism to.
Well, I would say for 25, we're pretty comfortable with those numbers as an administration.
For
But you're talking
inflation.
like 26, 27?
Yeah.
I mean,
What did you build in for
I-
25? Or was it
it
any inflation?
depends line item by line item
Okay.
on various different things.
That's where he builds it from a zero base. He
Yeah,
Puts.
You know,
the
like in
items.
police, because I see one of Tony's questions that he has, the increase in contract services in police is
Mhm.
7%. That's because new additional things are coming on board and the
Okay.
chief's ready to talk about that.
okay.
So, yeah, I mean,
All
different
right.
accounts are gonna be affected differently.
All right, so yeah, okay. If you've gone through that on material items and made individual judgments, then I
Yeah,
saw that in some places. I didn't see it other, and I was just curious how broad the scope of just, throwing
Right.
1% at it. But if you've gone through that on all the material points and done
yes,
individualized assessment, then I'm
But
good.
I'm gonna make sure that we're clear on this.
Okay.
The 1% is for 26, 27, 28. The 1% doesn't apply to 2025.
25,
He uses a zero-based budgeting, which means he, makes a shopping list of what
Yeah,
goes
I mean,
into that
we're
account
looking-
and
Yeah.
then totals
where
it
we
up.
were in 24, isn't anything new coming in 25?
yeah,
You know, if we're gonna be slightly under, okay, maybe we'll start with this number and then like Tony's point, 26, 27, 28, 29 is going up with the percents.
Yeah.
And that's where you might want to boost it
a little
to
bit.
2%, but I don't know. I
Is
don't know that that's going to make a big difference because things like income tax, interest income, other things on the conservative revenue side may offset those small increases, from going from 1% to 2%. And most of our costs are compensation related.
About 80%.
Compensation is
Yeah.
70% of our
70%.
costs,
At least.
at least. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think
So-
we're gonna,
So Joe, I take your point, Tony. That's a fair point. And so is your view, it's just too hard so 1% is a placeholder
Right.
and too hard to look out that far and say, okay, I'm good.
Yeah.
You've done that for 25, individualized,
Right.
and that 1% for everything else out years is a placeholder for,
Well, and I've done this for 11 years.
Yeah.
And as we go through the monthly things, you're like, budget's just about right on.
yeah,
So something's working.
yeah. Okay, for the next year, right.
Yeah.
And I agree with you.
Right.
It's been very close. Yeah. So I'm just
But I
thinking-
don't foresee, barring any crazy stuff like the mayor's talking about going on in Columbus, for the out years going, oh my gosh,
it's going to be.
our fund balance is crashing.
Yeah. Okay. It's more the inflation has gone faster than wages in the last few years, and so I'm okay.
One, I mean, we talked 26 through 29
Yeah.
has zero wage increase, and we all know it's gonna be there.
Right. Okay, I'm good. So I'm done with my questions on assumptions. Unless anyone else had an assumption question. Happy to just start paging through and picking up Tony's questions as we go along.
I guess my first question would be, are we all comfortable with that conservative number on the interest income? It's going down 400,000.
Well, so
Before
my-
that, do you have anything on page one, Tony, of
That
that?
is page one,
It's page two.
revenue page.
Physically page one. That's on page two.
Wait a minute.
Correct.
Let me.
So when we get to there, I
let me
can-
get
So
to
I just had a-
let me get to the right.
A couple questions on page one, Joe.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. Okay.
So my first question was on the municipal income tax. We already talked about that. I guess that's all I have on page one. So I'll go to page two in your question, Tony.
Yeah, I guess as a counselor, are we comfortable with the interest income being down 400,000 from what we expect to happen this year?
That's a revenue line item?
On page two,
And-
interest earned account 314.
So I also had that question because I know we have some actual numbers as we have investments going out to certain dates. So I didn't know if we did that calculation.
Right.
So
We're focusing on revenue numbers, the whole process of this 5-year budget. And I mean, it's just a conservative number that we as the administration are putting in place. With council, I mean, we're looking truly to focus on the expenditure side. Are you guys comfortable with the numbers that we have? But there's no vote on the revenue side. This was something that the mayor and I went over and we decided let's put in that number because we don't know how many decreases are gonna happen and what's gonna happen. Comfortably, I could sit here and say that we're gonna be higher than that.
Well, I guess what I'm saying, and I think that's what, I don't want to
Go ahead.
overstep, but
No.
we make our assessments on the expenditures based on how much revenue we have. So if we have investments in place and we know through the end of 2025, we're going to get X on them, while some investments might be coming off, there has to be a number, even if you took, it wouldn't be zero, but close to zero, and then you were getting 4% on something else, you would come up with a number. So I guess that's what.
Right, but based on the amount that's coming off, we don't know what that new number necessarily is gonna be.
I know, but you have a minimum, I guess is what I'm saying. And I don't know if this is based on that.
I actually had, so Joe, is the 1.1 for the full year
What do you mean?
of earned interest revenue full year 2024? What do you think? Do you think that's going to be
Yeah,
1.4?
Where are we gonna settle there?
Well, I estimated that at 1.4 million.
Yeah.
Because through October, we were over 1.1.
Okay.
And we have 2 months to go,
Yeah.
so 1.4 is probably close to the number.
So your question is really just 2025, because my question was,
I'm only looking at 2025.
yeah, my question was just broadly keeping that flat, since we have a good thinking that interest rates are going to come down over the next 5 years.
We don't
think so?
all agree, we don't all agree on that?
But we know what we have invested through certain dates. We do know that we actually know.
Yeah. I know, so you would keep it flat at 1 billion?
No, I would increase it to probably.
I mean, the out
budget,
years.
the
I mean,
budget.
the out years.
I don't focus on the out years, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I just want to go 2025. 2025, I would be comfortable with a number like 1.2 to 1.3 million, because I think it's too low, it's too conservative. And we have to, as a council, we're responsible for managing the whole business. I'm
Right.
sorry to call our municipality business, but we need to have numbers that are conservative on the revenue side, but not too conservative, because it's going to lead us to making bad choices.
So Joe, you said you would be comfortable, you put $1 million in the spreadsheet, but you said, I'd be comfortable saying it's going to come in higher than that. So if we, put something else in there like 1.2, does that change? I mean, I guess what are the ramifications?
Well, it
if-
would add 200,000.
Well,
but again,
obviously, but like, if that's your
These
best
are-
guess. sort of
These are
thing.
conservative
I'm good with that.
revenue line items.
Right.
That drive then, obviously, based on the revenue, based on the fund balance, you add those two together, and then the expenditures coming off, and then what the ending fund balance is gonna be. That ordinance that's in front of you just relates 100% on the expenditures.
Right. No, I get that. But
What we're saying is, as we put this together, the mayor and I looked at the numbers, feel comfortable by putting in that revenue line item. If you guys want to think it's going to be higher, well, that's a positive, but right now, personally,
Mhm.
I don't necessarily want to change that number, because if it comes to fruition next year with changes in the employer portion on police pension, it's covered with this lower number. And we're not gonna go lower at the end of the year of fund balance.
I want to have these, see, that's a very important discussion, like about changes in how pensions are funded and things like that. I just want to make sure that somewhere we're having the conversation about where we really are, that, I don't want it to even out because in another line somewhere else, I just want to know what the numbers are.
It seems to me that we start with the idea that we need a balanced budget. That's our obligation, to deliver a balanced budget. We have expenditures. We have zero-based budgeting. So we start with the buildup of what is it going to cost to, afford our operations in all aspects. To make sure that we end up neutral or positive, we have to have certain assumptions regarding our revenue streams. By the conservative estimation of what our revenue streams are, we are trying to assure council that we will be getting enough money in to meet these expenditures. Now, and I think that was Joe's point earlier, that this is really an expenditure conversation that we're having here. That, not to say that, gee, we may end up with more income, fantastic. But in the end, what we have to be comfortable with is that our income, our revenue has, met the need of the expenditures that we are projecting through our zero-based budgeting effort. And so long as we hit that mark, we're good. Now we know we can operate the city within the law and appropriately, that we are going to afford those things we are projecting we will be spending this year. If during the course of the year, there are, whatever project A that is outside the budget, then we can examine, gee, are our revenues succeeding in a better way? Do we have simply the cash reserve wherewithal to afford this sort of project? and we will address that. But this exercise is to see that our projected expenditures can be satisfied by the revenue we are projecting. So I would posit that a conservative estimation of our revenue is the healthier way of doing it, because that way we can just be comfortable that, yes, our projected expenses being approved in this budget are going to be satisfied.
I
You know,
think
whether we make more money or not
we all
is almost
want-
beside the
Just to
point.
clarify, I think we all want a very conservative look at our budget. We just want to make sure that there's due diligence behind the numbers. And when we talk about the revenues, we're talking about the revenues. And when we talk about the expenditures and the concerns in there, we're talking about those in that category, because I think we need to be ready. So if we're talking about we don't want to talk about the expenditures. We don't want to have, we want to show real due diligence behind the revenues. And then when it comes time to talk about expenditures and potential challenges, we want to talk about those and be ready for them.
Yeah, I think that is really not the view of a budget that I have. I can't speak for the other council members. View that I have is that this is our prediction of where we're going to be. And I understand conservatism, so we don't have to go over that again. I'm saying it's too conservative. That's what I'm saying. And I'd be comfortable with a higher number. And this isn't, I'm sorry, it's not the administration's budget. Otherwise, why would you be bringing it to council for approval? This is a budget that's going to be approved by council. I'm stating opinion as one council member on this particular item, and maybe some others, that number is too conservative. It paints a picture that I don't believe is truly where we're going to be at the end of the year, even baking in conservatism. That's simply all I'm saying. But my view of the budget is that we should come out close to all those numbers, or in total, at the end of the year. Hopefully our revenues somehow match the total revenues that we expect. Maybe income tax is higher, maybe real estate tax is lower. Those kinds of offsets happen. We're conservative. If we, at the end of the year, are a little ahead on income, on the revenue side, that's great. If we're a little below on the expenditure side, that's great. But what this budget should do, in my opinion, is to paint an accurate picture of what we think the end of 2025 will be, not an overly conservative one. So,
Can you, once again, articulate why you think this is conservative and what you base that on?
because I believe that we will be at 1.4 million by the end of the year in interest income. And to have only $1 million next year, when the amount of money we have to invest is continually increasing, and even with the expenditure on capital throughout the year, we're going to have most of that money, and I would guess that our cash balance might continue to increase. And I don't believe in projecting interest rates. I think that's the absolute worst way to invest fixed income funds, that we will have at least 1.2 million. And I think that's conservative. I wouldn't be surprised, and it's going to be on the tape, if we were at 1.5 or 1.6 next year. That's my opinion.
One thing I might,
Having invested up to $750 million for a different institution.
I appreciate that. I happen to have a lot of questions about what's going to happen this upcoming year, because there's going to be a major change in this country. So I can see the wisdom of projecting it conservatively. And I guess I'm like you. I'm more in favor of budgeting it conservatively. I
am
understand
too.
we have different opinions.
I am too, but
which is
I think it's too conservative.
I understand. I hear you.
Okay.
That's why I asked.
I don't
the
think
question.
anybody's hearing me, because they keep saying we want to budget conservatively. I do too.
Well, I don't have the confidence that next year is going to sail along exactly like this year as you do.
You have to look at, we have I'll call it a lump of assets that are there, that are already invested. And we're probably going to grow that for at least a good portion of the year. And interest rates aren't necessarily going to change. So
I don't know how you can say that. I don't know how you can project what's going
How
to
can
happen
you say
next
that they're
year.
gonna go up or down? I'm saying that we can't project interest rates, so we shouldn't take that into account. That's why we do laddering in our investments, because you can't project where interest rates are going to go. It's a fool's errand. There were times when I was at Honey Valley where, oh yeah, the interest rates are gonna go up. Yeah, they're gonna go up. Yeah, they're gonna go up. So we missed out on tons of interest income because we were waiting for that to happen. So.
I second that. Don't try to guess where the market's going.
Absolutely, do not.
But we do know how
No
much,
matter what the Fed is saying, no matter what Trump is saying, no matter what anybody's saying, it's not a knowable thing. If it was, I'd be on some beach in Aruba clipping coupons. It's not knowable.
Tony, I take your point. I mean, to my eyes, this is too conservative. I'm comfortable leaving where it is for now. Like, I don't necessarily know that it's worth,
But there's no for now. This is the budget.
Oh, no.
We don't change,
Right.
the
Sorry.
budget doesn't change.
I meant, I'm comfortable leaving where it is, kind of putting an asterisk by it in my mind. I don't think that's necessarily the best way to go forward, but, given that there's some debate here, I don't know how we.
We can all vote on the budget when it's all done.
Yeah.
and I think, Scott, you make a good point as to like revenues. That's an easier one to say is, but we do have a certain amount of money in our investment account. I don't know. I wish we were working on an actual calculation. Calculation behind it.
Well, I've said my piece. Let's go on.
The bottom line is it's not going to make or break, I don't think, anything today, right?
No,
But
but
I think I agree with you. It's important to have realistic assumptions.
My
not
view,
overly
my
conservative.
view is that the budget should be a realistic picture of where we think we
Right.
will be for the year.
Right.
And that if that's not true, then I can leave and go to the charter review meeting because this one's a waste of my
Well, and
time.
that's what I was saying, that it definitely shouldn't be making up for something we see on the expenditure side. That we talk about when we talk about expenditures. And if we need to have a placeholder in expenditures because we think something could happen bad in Columbus for us, we need to talk about that when we're talking about expenditures, not have it sort of,
Yeah, I 100% agree,
You know what I'm
Melanie. It
saying?
shouldn't be like, okay, we're holding this out in case this thing happens in this other line item. It should be almost, if it can't be reflected because it's an unknown, it has to just be sort of, okay, well, we have to set this aside in this area, just knowing that there's this possibility out there. We can't reflect it in the document at this time because it's too much of a question mark.
and be ready.
Please.
Joe, I have another question. Are you? well,
I'm done with interest income.
Okay. Joe, just remind me, lease revenue, is that cell tower? What is that?
Yeah.
Okay. I have nothing else on revenue. Anyone else? Up to expenditures?
So I'm going to ignore my first two questions on police salaries and health insurance because the percentages I was assuming were there, or what I was assuming to calculate the percentage was based on the fact that we would have had an updated projection for 2024. If we don't, then my percentages are meaningless. So the third question, though, is what's included in contract services? You alluded to the fact that the chief was going to tell us about that.
For police?
Yeah.
The biggest thing, well, what's included is the block camera system, the body cameras are all on lease, so we put those in contract services. Plus there's a maintenance program included. The in-car cameras are also part of contract services. The court system.
You mean the what we pay Shaker?
Is in
Okay.
contract services. Also, the prosecution that we use.
The prosecutor?
Yes.
Oh, that's not outside legal?
Well, let me pull that real quick.
Your question outside legal, it's usually for the labor attorney.
Oh,
But
For contract negotiations or,
Or
other things, grievances.
hypothetical grievance,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, okay.
Range rental, our personnel system called Guardian Tracking System is also in
Okay,
contract services. And usually we do pay the prosecutor when it comes to actual cases,
Mhm.
hearings, that does come out of outside legal,
okay.
so that can fluctuate.
I guess my question really is, what are the biggest three items in there and how much are they?
Biggest
it's-
three items would,
The amount is,
190.
190,000.
sure,
Is veg in there, for example?
edges,
Edges now.
that's 20,000.
Yeah.
Edges,
Edges, $20,000.
20, okay.
Yeah, that's probably the largest one. The others would be what I mentioned with the camera systems, the body cameras, the in-car cameras and the flock.
And those are counted as contract services?
Yeah, because we don't own them. It's a 5-year program with, any repairs and upgrades are included as well.
It's like leasing a car, except you get maintenance and everything else.
All right.
The increase you mentioned, the 7%.
I'm not worried about the increase because my increases are based on a faulty assumption on my part. I thought that the projection was updated.
Well, there was an addition I could mention to you.
Yeah, we added the 18th officer
Oh,
that was not reflected in the original 24 budget.
But that's, I'm sorry, you added him to what?
We were authorized to hire an
But
18th officer.
it didn't change
Hired
the number in the police projection for 2024, did it?
No.
Okay. That's what I'm talking about, simply
Oh,
how
yeah.
numbers relate to each other. So, and I'm just talking about the contract services, which is a big number. It's almost $2 million throughout this. And to me, contract services is, a generic term, and it doesn't tell you what's money's being spent on. So, and I know where that comes from because that's the way the state likes you to report, but the state isn't running a business, so.
But it's nice for us to hear what that includes too. That way we have a
Right.
better understanding. It's valuable.
Right, and
No,
we're-
nobody's saying anybody's spending any money
No, we just,
Right.
but
incorrectly or improperly. It's just we would, as council, I as a council person would want to know what those larger numbers are. Like I said, there's $2 million in contract service. Some of them are
That's
obvious.
190,000.
No, I know, but throughout the budget, there's almost 2 million. And that generic title, it doesn't give me enough information to understand what thought I was approving, which is, or being asked to approve, which is this budget.
Right.
Now, some of them are obvious, like in the prisoner, or in the dispatch area. That's obvious. That's our contract with Beechwood.
In
But
building, that's the big
others are not.
Okay.
Right, but like in building, your big one is what we pay to Moreland Hills.
Right,
Yeah,
right. No, I know. There are some that
Okay.
are obvious and some that are not.
Yeah.
And those are two that are obvious.
All right, well,
Go to the next bucket, police and fire communications. I have no questions on that. Tony, did you have one?
I guess the only question I have, it's probably a silly question, is the increase based on a contract with Beechwood? Probably the answer has got to be yes. I guess I'd like to see some of these contracts. I don't know that we've seen some of them. What's the newest contract we have with Beechwood? And do we have at least a term sheet to look at?
it's expiring, but I'm building in for the fact that they're gonna ask for more money.
Okay, so it's expiring at the end of 24?
I'd have to double check if it's 24, 25. I built in 3% for
Okay,
each of the years.
okay.
Assuming that they would be asking us that based on wage increases in
Sure.
Beechwood.
Yeah, no,
You'd expect
that's
yeah.
fine. I guess reading through the budget gives me clues about other things that I want to ask about. So I'd like to kind of see
No.
the picture of all of our contracts and when do they expire and what are we paying and that kind of thing. I'd like, maybe a list sometime of all those contracts would be helpful.
I don't think it's ever questioning the need for these things. It's just doing our due diligence and being informed. So,
Building department? I had the same question Tony did.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with the wage increase or the health insurance, understanding what's there, but the contract services, 187?
What ends up coming out of there is some plan examiner fees. We are in the process of switching software from our old billing department software to a newer billing software. What's also in there is money that I do not know right now from Moreland Hills, what the estimated cost is gonna be for the two individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Architects' fees are in there
Okay,
that come in for the ABR,
okay,
as well as an electrical inspector, because we have an outside electrical inspector.
okay.
Mhm.
All right, that's fair, that's helpful, thank you.
On solid waste, so this is another example where 25 goes, well, this is one place where the 25 for contract services goes up in 2025, but down in 2026.
Yep.
And that,
That is looking at, it's a placeholder for split between solid waste as well as service, a GIS tracking software that Mr. Advent is in the process of looking at. We're looking at the type of information that Don has compared to the information Don doesn't have, and being able to track every single piece of stop sign, this sign, that sign, when was it replaced? What else?
Sewer, like,
Catch basin.
catch basin cleaning, catch basin repairs. How long is this stuff lasting? Are we getting a good investment?
so you have an automated system to record all that?
That's what we're trying to get to, because we do
Okay.
not have that. We had a in-house system and we had a failure with it and lost some information, most of it pertaining back to the heavy storms we had back in 12, 13, 14.
Okay.
But, so what we're trying to do is bring the service department up to the 21st century on recording these things. And Don has a lot of information. We want to be able to obtain that information and through a GIS tracking system.
And other cities are doing this already, I assume?
Many other cities are doing this.
Yeah.
What does GIS stand for?
Geographic information systems.
So,
And I'm sorry, why does it go up and then back down?
I think that's because of the implementation of it,
So it's a one-year expense to implement?
and to implement it, and then it would be a contract
Okay,
over every month.
We haven't settled on how much we're gonna be able to pump into the system in-house versus having the software company come in to assist. So it's roughly a $15,000 bump
Got it.
in 25.
Got it. Okay.
Which we won't need obviously in 26.
Yep. Got it.
Much easier to maintain the system than create a system.
thank you.
Still,
I-
as you're going through this, would you say the department as well as the page number? Because then I can follow.
Sure.
follow
So,
My list.
Go ahead. I'm on solid waste. And I don't have any other questions on solid waste. So I'm on to page 7,
Which is,
which is service department.
Okay.
And a similar question there, Joe. Again, it's 2025 bumps on contract services and then goes down. Is there a similar,
Well, part of that is the
Part of it is
GIS,
is the GIS? Oh, you're splitting it
It's
between.
split between two
Got it.
departments.
Got
Yeah.
but the biggest part of that cost is cleaning and televising the various storm sewers throughout the city.
So you're at 105 this year. What, are you about that in actual for 2024?
It's gonna be slightly less because we budget a number for televising and cleaning.
Okay,
Sometimes we don't need the cleaning, but you don't know until you get in there.
okay,
We always need the televising, but if there's really no obstructions, we would not be jetting it, so that'll save money.
got it.
It's a placeholder. We're looking at, I believe, what, Fairmont next year?
So you have a one-time bump in 2025 for the GIS, and then your new level is up to 119 as a sustainable matter, which is about 20% higher than 2024.
Cost of televising and cleaning goes higher.
Goes higher. That's
But
built in. Okay.
We will do what we've done in the past. We will identify the street. We will bid it out.
Yep.
That's just an estimate at that point in time because
Okay.
they have different line items in the budget. At the end of the day, Don and his team, they track exactly what's done. And we will only use it if we need it.
Okay.
As we discussed with council last year, we have moved to a more aggressive examination of our storm sewer systems to make sure that they are
Okay.
kept clean.
I mean,
That's
that'll
just
prevent
reflecting that
flooding in
in-
the future, sure.
Reflecting that additional activity
Yeah.
and cost. Yeah. Got it.
And is this, I'm just curious, if you go back to 2022, it was really a lot lower. Why? Because the change is much greater in this one than in the,
We were ramping up the aggressiveness on the storm cleaning.
okay. Thank you.
So I'm up to page 8 now on Mayor Safety Director. I have no.
I have no questions there. No question is irrelevant.
Then I'm on to council, page 9. I have no questions
I
there.
just had, asking Joe,
I did stick Tony.
I don't know if you had a chance to put it in yet.
It didn't come out for all of your sheets. It is in the appropriation sheet. You came into my office, asked me for 25 more.
Yeah.
Through 25 then.
Yeah, because we have some costs that'll happen because of the Charter Review Commission next year. And
Sorry,
I've
what
listened-
line are you looking at?
they aren't there yet. Joe is going to
Oh,
put them
okay.
in. But I've asked for 2,500 for election, or 6,500 for election costs, 7,500 for legal costs,
Yeah, right now.
and
it's-
11,000 for printing,
Mhm.
mailing, and other costs.
I had 10,000
Yeah.
in, which was a high number to begin with, because normally, in
Yeah,
a normal year,
yeah.
you didn't. You asked for 25 more, so that number under other operations and maintenance is 35,000.
Oh, it could be 25. I didn't know you had put anything in there. So-
Yeah, but again, I mean, we could change it, but
You
you're
don't-
not gonna use it if you're not gonna use it.
Right, that's
Right.
true.
So is that-
That's fine.
Is that line changed now from 10,000 to 35?
It says 35 now.
When did that change?
Mr. Gentili
When
asked for that
Tony
this
popped this out
week.
of my office.
But it's still the same. way.
25,000 that I just listed for you is what we expect to have to spend for.
Right,
the,
no, that's
Charter
fine. I
Review
just-
Commission.
I just printed this stuff out. Did it get revised in our electronic version?
No, I could send out the new electronic version. I didn't want the
I haven't seen it. I haven't
complication.
seen it either. That's just, yeah.
No, I didn't want the complication. You guys
Yeah,
got paper versions, that's one
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
and
yeah,
electronic.
yeah. I'm fine.
So I thought, it's one line item, it's 25,000.
Gotcha.
Tony asked for it, we were gonna talk about it today.
Thank you.
I have,
Oh, sure.
I'm up to page 9. I have no other questions on 9.
What
10,
department is that?
finance is 10. I have no questions on 10.
I have no questions there either.
Okay, and then
No questions on public land and buildings either.
It's page 11.
Yeah.
Page 11, no, I do not either.
Page
Just,
12?
I have a question on page 11, just to remind me. Don, you have a line contract services engineering, 62,000. I assume that, remind me, that's not, your fees not charged to a project?
We do a lot of plan review. and
Plan
I don't know if
review.
that- Does that come, is that part of?
Site,
Yeah, like somebody submits for a new house.
Okay.
It's like $1,000 fee for that, plus another $750 for do erosion inspection. So for every house, there's $1,700.
Okay,
You got 20 new homes, plus some other big site plan or
Okay.
whatever, any of those types of things. Country club's doing some big project.
Yeah.
We build the city, that gets reimbursed by the developer or the builder.
builder,
and
okay.
That's how this.
That's what that is. Because other things like the big sewer project, you charge that to the project.
Yes.
Your fees
Yeah,
go into the
that's
project.
that goes
specific.
capital project.
Right,
that's
right.
capital.
Yeah.
And this is independent of that. Got it. Okay, that's just a question.
Some of that reimbursed when,
A lot
It
of,
is.
yeah.
Almost
Yeah.
all of it.
yeah, like the site,
It's charged to the permit holder.
they pay $1,000.
Right.
He uses the $1,000, it's a wash.
Right, okay.
If it would, for some reason, go over, even though it's never gone over, we would obviously ask for more.
And then you reimburse what's unused?
Well, it's generally around $1,000. We got it
Okay,
honed down. But like I'm saying, if it ever does go over, we would definitely ask for more.
okay.
So I have nothing else on page 11. I'm up to 12, which is general government.
Before you get there, I just had this question, Joe, on the county auditor's deductions. Why do we show that as a department? Those are really costs that belong to me in my mind to other city departments.
For county auditor,
Yeah, it's not really a department. So couldn't we capture those in?
and break them up into all the different pieces. Why would we do that?
No, how many pieces are there?
Well, you have a police pension fund, you got a fire pension fund, you have
Let me-
the general fund, you
wait.
got the bond retirement.
Let me look at it. Maybe I'm
They're
misremembering.
just all captured in one place.
And it's page 11, did you say?
Yeah, page 11, county auditors deductions. That's the bucket you're talking about.
There's, all right. There's three items. That's all right.
Yeah, I mean, it just keeps it in one place.
I'm up to page 12 on general government. Joe, could you remind me, I think I know the answer. Contract services includes RITA, IT.
Our IT, which is BPI, alarm monitoring, bank charges, mail machine lease,
Okay.
senior van rides, any payroll charges, from Paycor, tactical planning, which for the most part is, George, our planner.
Okay.
It's a fairly big number. How much of that is Rita, roughly?
A decent amount. I could give you a number. I could
Okay.
write it to get you a number.
So like
Okay. Yeah, if you could list,
$100,000, and it's big, right? That's one of,
Yeah, I mean, that's,
if you could
def-
give us the three biggest
okay.
items in there. Thanks.
I have a question about the percentages, the last two items. Is there like a standard that we should kind of be thinking about as, minimum, ideal, in terms
For
of
what?
the
unencumbered cash
percentages of
balances.
unencumbered fund balances? Those last two items. Because I'm like, great, 206%. That sounds great, but like, is it great? I don't have a
Oh, yeah.
baseline. Like
No,
what?
it's incredibly great.
So
If you would ask GF, no, if
Right.
you would ask
I mean, I know
GFOA,
yeah, I'm just is there like
GFOA would tell you a much lower number.
right. So is there a? And I'm asking this in terms of like thinking about other potential projects the city could pursue. What do we want to always make sure? Is there a baseline number that you want to be above this number to feel comfortable looking forward? Like, is there a
This
standard for
number ties in-
municipalities?
This number ties into a lot of things.
Right.
One,
Yeah, that's what I'm
It
asking.
ties into when we do our financials and do it with a modified accrual basis. Because there are certain costs that are listed on our financials that potentially, if you ever went to Moody's for a bond rating, they will look at. Some of them I disagree with. One of them is the unfunded pension costs.
Which aren't our problem.
Well, but they have to
On
be
a
reported
ratings
as if they're.
basis, it can be our problem.
If
The
that's
state of
our-
Ohio guarantees
Hmm.
retirement pensions.
Mhm.
So unless the state of Ohio truly goes bankrupt, it's not gonna be an issue.
Right.
The city of Cincinnati is the only one who handles the pensions on their own and they don't play with the system. That's crazy. That's how a lot of other states are. Illinois is that way, et cetera. However, the finance board said Ohio's not showing fair reporting compared to the rest of the country. So in our financials with the audited that get trued up, they put in a number that assumes we pay for all retiree retirements. Moody's looks at that, so you still wanna have enough of a fund balance, we still wanna be a AAA city. Some of these numbers also relate to union negotiations, so if you wanna call me at some other time, we could talk.
So I think your question is, what is the best practice?
Yeah.
Taking all that into account,
Right.
including the various accounting hooey things that some bond rater may take into account, though.
But that's huge, Jim.
I understand.
Yeah.
But if you would take the median city in the state of Ohio and rule of thumb these percentages, that's what I think that's what
That's
you're asking.
exactly. I'm just curious if there was sort of like industry standard, so to speak, where this is considered, baseline. Like you should be minimum. This is what this number should be.
Right.
I think,
And,
I think-
I'll
and
work
I
on-
understand there's like complications, and I don't even need you to, come up with that number for me. I wasn't sure if this was something that is like I said, like a known industry standard that's out there in the world. Like if you're running a municipality, you always need to be at X percentage, or ideally you would be at X percentage.
GFOA has different numbers.
Yeah.
AAA rated cities.
Okay.
We're one of the few cities, as small as we are, that has a AAA rating.
Yeah.
We want to maintain that AAA rating.
Yeah, but the question is, do we need this level of overage to maintain a AAA rating? My guess is we don't.
Not as high, but you
And
would
that's-
be
that's-
surprised on how much of our, but
I
Jim, this is real for the,
I understand that, but how much is too much?
Well, and the other question I think that's really important or other piece that's important to remember is that some of these they're all the unencumbered fund balances. So that's including the right? All those fire.
they all,
So-
yeah.
So some of these are funds, I mean, every city might not have the similar funding structure that we have, percentage wise. So some of those dollars are not relevant
Well,
toward projects or other activities.
This is just the general fund though, right? So,
I thought,
no,
Well-
this is just the general fund.
We do it
Because I'm
fund by
looking
fund.
at
Yeah.
general fund cash balance,
Right.
right?
so you're saying you only want it for the general fund, not all
Well,
funds.
I just
we're
want to
asking,
know the money we have in the bank relative to what our expenses are.
Excluding like fire levy and things like that are designated.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Jackie, one way to look at it would be the money in the bank is how many years of our,
Yes.
of our operating
Yes.
budget.
and so
And it's
Yeah.
kind of like 2 right now.
Yeah.
is there a
That's,
rule of
that's a
thumb?
little, that's a little, it's kind of what you're comfortable with.
Yeah, but is there a rule of thumb that says if you have two, you're in really good shape? Because I think we're a rare city. I bet we're in the top 1% of Ohio in those numbers.
No doubt.
Right. Like how many councils are sitting around talking about like,
Well-
we have
Well,
so
it's not a
much
flat
money.
number. It's based on expenditures,
No, the percentage numbers,
Infrastructure.
the percentage numbers in our
the
general fund.
percentage number.
The
Yeah.
percent of expenditures and revenues, I bet we're in the top 1% in the state of Ohio.
Okay, this is an important conversation. We're kind of going stray
So
from
stay on
our
budget.
budget conversation. It's an important conversation. We will be having the conversation, I
Let's
predict,
talk budget.
but let's
But
go
Yeah.
back
so
to the
to
budget.
the extent,
Ties
but
into
to the extent of Jackie's question, and there are guidelines, I'd love to know what the world looks like. I think your question is right on in terms of, because I look at that and say, wow, we're within more than great shape.
All right, I'll end with this because it has so many different tentacles. Years ago, before I got here, where you thought it was doom and gloom and the city was bankrupt, there are rules of thumb that said the percentage of general fund balance you had back then was right where it should be. There are, the city of Akron, for example, has maybe a 5, 7, 10 at the highest percent carryover.
Mhm.
And that's a big city where a lot of big things could happen compared to our city.
Right.
So the percentages change. To me, I mean, I could give some benchmarks. There's not hardcore. It's really where this city wants to be.
But Joe, it has,
This is a bigger
it has to be said though, that that level might have been where we should have been. But it hadn't been for the good work of this mayor and this council, we were not on a sustainable
Oh, no question.
spending level. that
And I
was
agree.
important, that was
Sustainability is
important, because
the-
that number would have been,
No question.
would have been plummeting.
And we're different than a lot of cities. We don't have a giant GM plant that's suddenly going to leave. Right? So we don't have those kind of systemic risks that other cities have. Or
Correct.
like
Heinen's
Mayfield
probably
had
our
with,
biggest risk.
with Progressive, suddenly all the offices are empty.
And who would have thought that? You always think Chevy, you think Ford,
But we don't have that here.
right?
But
So we don't have that kind of systemic revenue. Suddenly we're underwater.
Mhm.
So we can be, so I keep looking to, I think Jackie's point and saying, wow, we've got plenty of cushion, maybe too much.
But we do have, and it's a fair question, and I don't want to belabor it without, I think we're going on, but we do have economic peaks and valleys, and they happen just cyclically. That's just life. That's just the continuing
But-
experience. So we want to be ready for the bad times when we're in the good times.
Yes. All right, let's get back to our budget. That is what I urge.
Well, this is,
This is an important conversation. I'm not trying to denigrate it. I'm just saying it's beyond this morning's conversation.
But
We're going to need to have this
we
conversation.
should put it on the agenda, because this is where we start thinking about it, and then we don't
Okay.
think about it. So if we can put it on an agenda.
But we'll
so we can-
also need like sort of a, like, to your point, Tony, we need to see where we're going. If we have trend lines, we can't really assess it without some trend lines, like as far as expenditures, like salaries.
all right,
I
I'm
have,
up to page 13. I have nothing.
I'm sorry, can we
Go
go
ahead.
back to 12 for a second? I'm sorry, I had just a couple of minor things. On the general government, utilities, fairly large increase for your projection for 2025. Just curious why.
Because they're gonna come in slightly higher than the 37. And I mean, I could get you a detail on what utilities are, but if you go back to 22, it was at 78.
So you're saying
Actually-
24 is coming in higher?
Right, but the changing where the meters are, if we got new meters, can we break things up? But I mean, if you look going back to 22, it's at 78,000.
Yeah.
Well, and I look at 23,
Yeah, I was trying to-
Right, and because that was a mistake that it just got put in the wrong place. It
okay.
ended up somewhere else.
Also,
So council's aware, there are some projections that utility prices are going to be rising by as much as 25% during the next 5 years. Because of,
The wholesale.
again, down in Columbus, they're dealing with some issues. It deals with power generation issues and, the auction for resources that occurred last January. And all of this is folding into what may be a dramatic change in the way utilities are being priced out in the state of Ohio that could lead to a 25% increase. Now they're talking about re-regulating the power generation systems that was deregulated several years ago. There are a lot of issues going on in power. And the projection is that power aspect of utilities may be going up dramatically. So
Do you know how much higher it's going to come in this year than the budget? If we're at, the budget
Can you tell
says,
me how cold it's gonna be for the last 2?
no, for
That,
this,
no, that's,
well, it's already into December. We're already,
well, in December,
What is
we're
today?
paying November. November was colder than it was the previous year.
I mean,
I mean,
I'm
not
just saying there are
dramatic-
only 23 days left in the month, and I didn't know if we were above
not
this number
dramatically
now.
higher.
Are we
I
above?
mean, we're talking
You're building
$3,000.
you're building in conservatism there. I'm fine.
Yeah. And the fact that, like the mayor said, the new auction for wholesale power,
No, I'm fine with having a high number. I just wanted to know where we are, and especially if it could go up.
3,000.
I mean, these are good conversations, I think. If we think that they could go up, and this is reflected in a variety of spots in our budget, I don't know how we're metered. I just think it's very relevant in our,
Well, when this
Planning.
budget was put together and looking at the numbers, some of the data was coming back from September. Because some of the October bills weren't being paid yet. And I was using benchmarks going back then because I needed to get the budget out in the middle of November. So I mean, we're talking maybe $3,000-$4,000 in
Okay,
total.
no, I just want,
Yeah.
I just want to know, and especially if we think energy costs are going up, I just want to be
I
ready.
would say 3,000 is probably a safe number.
Okay,
Okay, one last question on that page, under non-government, and I should probably know the answer to this, but the transfers capital improvement fund, which jumps in 2025,
Mhm.
why?
Based on the projects that we're budgeting in
Okay,
2025.
this is all just part of that.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Page 13,
ARPA,
ARPA, I have nothing. Anyone else? Street construction, page 14, I have nothing.
I only have questions when it comes to fire levy, I think.
Okay, then I have nothing on recycle, which is page 16, nothing on American Rescue 17, Merc Fund 18, FEMA Grant Fund 19,
Did you say?
Fire
No,
Levy
fire
Fund.
hasn't come yet.
Okay.
Fire
Now it
Levy
is.
Fund, Fire Levy Fund, page 20. Is that where you have one, Tony?
Yeah, the overtime increase is 50,000, 30%.
We will be coming down in the first quarter of 2025 to potentially be adjusting some of these numbers. In some cases, it's getting harder and harder to hire and maintain part-time workers.
Oh.
That we're living off of. And we're debating, are we gonna potentially be going to request another full-time person? How does that help our part-time? How will that help our overtime? But in some cases, we've got a couple individuals that are current full-time employees that have decent amount of overtime because it's hard to backfill with part-time.
Chief, has that gotten worse? I mean, worse, just because fewer people want to work part-time, or?
Yes, and it's not our problem. It's state of Ohio. It's a national problem. So, we don't know if it's the newer generation. So just so everybody knows, we rely on part-timers that are trained from other departments. So they work full-time position in other departments. We use Highland Heights, Mayfield Heights, Brecksville, Beechwood. We have individuals work there full-time and then come here and work part-time. Some of the problems with that is if they're having staffing problems, vacation, sick time, holiday, and they have to cover their shifts, that person's held, and then that creates a gap for us.
Well, also not necessarily even held, but the opportunity, if they come work for us, it is not under the police and fire pension system.
So they'd rather
For
work
us,
there.
depending on when they started with us, it could either be PERS or it could be Social Security.
Okay.
So if they have an opportunity to work at their home place, they're gonna make more money going for their pension because it's related. So it's kind of like a bunch of tentacles that's causing part of this.
But
And the younger individuals today are only looking at that job. They don't seem to be interested in working another part-time job.
that's a cultural shift, you're saying,
Yes.
apparently.
Yep.
so you're,
And they're relating it to a lot of the office too. They're just coming on board, that it's even worse.
And they don't have their side businesses like firemen used to,
Painting, carpet cleaning,
whatever,
yeah.
building. I
Well,
mean,
no,
I know
but the
some
other
was
thing
a
we talked
builder.
about is they have more and more opportunities to work in hospitals. And that is driving part of it because of the type of money they get paid to work in the hospital in the operating room.
As an EMT or as a nurse or
It's paramedic.
paramedic?
They're helping staff out their ERs and
because there's a
other
gap there
areas.
too.
Yeah, because there was a nursing gap
Fire
there.
paramedics.
Huh.
So they started filling with paramedics to fill their gaps.
Okay. So what's the, just theoretically, the longer term solution? Are we going to have to staff up full-time more at some point to cover this?
So,
Or?
yeah, I would say, converting some of our part-time, right now we staff 4 around the clock. One of those shifts is only 50% full-time.
Okay.
One of those was injured and he's off probably till January or February. That's created a huge gap. So I had to shift another person over to put a minimum of 2 on that shift. So
Right.
now we have 2 shifts with 2 full-timers and 2 part-timers.
Wow.
Those gaps are very difficult to fill.
Right now, you have 12 full-timers, right? Is it,
No, we
How many?
have 10, which includes me.
10 full-timers, and then everything else is
Nine,
part-time.
I'm sorry, nine.
9.
And then the other two jumps there, hospitalization and employer's liability, those jump, same reason?
Yes.
Well, and hospitalization, keep in mind, we budgeted an 18% increase, it's gonna come down less.
So for
The
this
police
year,
I'm sorry, the police and fire pension fund goes up 50,000 though?
Where do you see that?
Let's see. What, I'm sorry, what page is that again?
page,
You're on 20 now.
27, or 2020, 2022, 2021.
I might have a bad number because I typed all these in, so. Let's-
So Chief, just going forward while Tony's looking for that, you're just gonna have to almost certainly pull more full-time, right?
Yes.
Okay. You're not planning that in 2025 yet?
I would like to have one person because that helps, it puts us at a level, this one person off is causing us big problems. I worked
Okay.
almost 250 hours last month filling gaps.
Wow.
So it shows you how critical that one position
It
is.
is. All right, are you gonna go ahead and pull that trigger though? Is just get that
We're
done? Or do
looking
you
at
have to wait for something else to happen?
No, actually, we're in a good position. It's, we're legislated for that, have been. And we test annually, so we just gave a test. 150 people took the test, so.
Okay.
And you
The
feel
the increase I
confident.
was talking about, Joe, is this employer's liability
Yeah,
and
we'll
the
find it.
expenditures.
Yeah, because police
Goes
and
from-
fire pension are pages 22 and 23,
No, I'm looking at,
but the contribution of the pension cost is what this is.
let me ask the question first, because it's the line that says employer's liability.
Mhm.
Under police and fire, it's the last line before the total. 25,000 in 2024, or 75,000, and then 125 in 2025. That's the
Where, Tony,
$50,000.
I'm sorry, where are you?
Page
I'm
22.
He's the
on
last-
page 20, the
Right.
last line, employer's liability before personnel subtotal,
Got it. Thank you.
goes from 75,000 to 125.
That's correct.
Okay, so, but why?
Because if we would get to page 23, which is the fire pension fund,
Okay,
I needed to pull fire pension. What I would do wanted to do would be to actually transfer money from the fire levy fund to the fire pension fund to handle 100% of the fire pension costs. I cannot do that unless I go down to Cuyahoga County and have a judge who truly has no idea what I'm talking about, giving me permission to make that type of transfer, and that's state law. So I am forced by paying for a certain amount of fire pension cost out of the fire levy, and the remainder based on the real estate taxes, et cetera, that come into the fire pension fund, the other piece of it.
okay, so what, I guess maybe the question is, what is the fire pension cost to the city irrespective of the funds? Is there a change in that? You know what I'm saying? I don't care what fund it comes out of. If we're,
Well, no,
if
but I
we're
don't have
spending,
that number off the top of my head.
okay, but if we're spending $245,000 in 2024, and I'm just making up a number, and then it's 255 next year for both funds, then that's fine. But the way it looks is.
This isn't one of the numbers that is gonna change
Oh.
after the chief, the mayor, and I
People don't walk around.
go through the whole tentacles of what we're gonna be doing with fire. Are we gonna be asking for a new full-time? Then we'll be reducing part-time, and that number's gonna get affected by that. But for right now, for what's in the budget, I moved it up to the 125 to basically keep the fire pension from dropping dramatically.
The fire pension
Fund,
fund
which is
balance,
page 23.
fund balance? Is that what you're?
Yeah, and as you can see, even at, right now, the estimated $125,000 bump that fund balance is going down each year.
Yeah, I noticed that.
I'm still a little confused, but
Yeah.
we can.
No,
Let it go.
we'll have, the number will change.
Yeah.
Once we get through with our exercise,
I'm
work
gonna,
with the
I'm
chief.
gonna, I'm gonna let it go. I'm gonna ask you offline because it's 2.5 hours in. I'm not tracking.
So just show historically the fire levy fund, you used funds from the fire levy fund to supplement the fire pension fund, correct?
Correct.
And that was perfectly within the statute because it's supporting our fire department, which is what the revenue source the voters approved and reauthorized this year.
Right.
Right. And so, but I'm looking at, maybe it's a different question than Tony's, but what you just said is I'm looking at the unencumbered cash balance in the fire levy fund, and that's steadily going down over the years from 1.4, well, in recent, I guess your projection has it steadily going down. And it's steadily going down simply because inflationary cost, or what's the driver of that?
Well, it's,
So it's 2.3 in 2024.
right, I would say, once we took to the vote of the ballot, for the levy,
Mhm.
we did a renewal,
Right,
which doesn't get us any more money.
right.
And we have done that for
Long time.
many levies.
Yes,
It's almost getting to a point that the next levy
yeah,
is gonna have to be a replacement.
okay.
Is there, I've thought about that, because then we lose
Right,
the homestead and
Well,
rollback,
that's
right?
right.
But what you will gain in real estate value will more than offset that.
I know, it's just gonna hit our,
It hits the
it
residents.
hits our residents. I didn't know, that's a question I've had for a while, because I know this has been kind of happening over the past decade, everyone
Right.
has this problem. Are we allowed to have two levies? Can we maintain this levy and have a second levy, so we maintain the homesteader and a smaller levy? Are you allowed to do that?
You could do another levy.
I'm just trying to figure out a way that we don't lose the homestead and rollback, so it
Well,
doesn't hit our community members.
We could just fund this from the general fund,
Well, that's true too.
right? We leave the
That's
levy
true.
like it is, and we could take some of our surplus.
And that's
use it.
fine. I just hate to lose that big chunk of money. That might be the way to do it.
Yeah, that way we leave it
But we
like
just
it
have to
is.
be prepared to have those dollars there.
Right.
I just don't want to lose the homestead and rollback.
Yeah,
That's,
no, I think that's, given our general fund status, that's the way to handle this,
Mhm.
so.
Yeah, but to your point, doing a new levy, I know what you're saying. You don't want to lose a homestead rollback because it's going to impact the residents.
Yeah,
Well, doing a new levy is going to impact our residents.
yes, but
But-
on a
but-
smaller scale. And I,
Right, so-
maybe the way Jim's talking about doing
I
it
We
think-
also got the general
Jim-
fund.
is the right point.
Yeah.
I just didn't, when you said do a new levy, I got panicked. That's all.
Oh, yeah.
But
Gotcha.
even with that, well, that's kind of built in now, because you're projecting these cost increases. It will obviously real for 2025, and then the normal increase for the rest of the normal inflationary for the rest of the years, right?
Right.
Right.
So I would just, and we're still have a positive cash balance in 2029 of, 624,000. So we're in good shape for a while, but at some point, this is
Right,
going
but
to stop
also
funding the whole fire department.
But also keep in mind, no raises are baked in
You got it.
26 going forward
So
too.
it'll
So
go-
actually, it's going to go down more.
It'll go down faster.
Right.
So we just anticipate that at some point that fixed pool of money is going to have to be supplemented with general fund revenue.
Right.
Now, do some of the
Exactly.
rumblings that are happening in Columbus, I mean, I know we don't know where that's going right now. That might be part of our conversation too, I assume, if they change the structuring of the
It could.
pension.
So you could.
Well, right now, they're not talking fire.
Oh, they're not, okay, but.
No, fire's at 24, police is at 19 and a half. And what they're trying to do is get police up to 24.
Okay.
But you're right, it could go to 26. But to the mayor's point, PERS is at 14.
That's what,
It is my personal belief that PERS as a system as a whole has managed much better than the police and fire pension system has. And that's for
Absolutely.
numerous reasons. But at some point, I could see PERS maybe want to go from 14 to 16 or to 18.
all right, we just have to have our ears open, I guess.
Yeah.
if Something's coming.
And unfortunately, we're not in control of it.
No, but
We
we
can
can
fight all we want on it, but the legislators in
But we
Columbus
can be
will
ready.
decide.
be ready.
I have, just continuing, I have nothing on 20, nothing else on 21 or 22, which is police pension fund. Nothing else on fair pension fund. I'm up to the bond retirement fund. Joe, just a question. This is a mechanical question on bond retirement. So we have bond retirement fund balance today, or projected in 2024 of 850,000. Just mechanically, is that, I mean, our bonds are all, they're rolling off now, right? So
Yeah, I mean,
in another 10 years, we'll have no city debt or whatever the
No.
number is.
every time, well, no, city debt.
City debt.
Yeah,
Putting aside assessment debt. which is-
short of the OPWC 0% loan.
Yeah. So in terms of interest-bearing city debt, those are going
We
down.
just entered one that's gonna be on the books until 2046.
For sewers, assessment debt.
No. But it's a small amount. It was 262,000.
It's tiny. It's our
It's-
piece of the assessment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
but it's
no, that was
inconsequential.
a 0% loan of 262,000 that we got
So,
that related to the stormwater project
yeah,
on Shaker.
I got that, but it's inconsequential relative. I mean, it's a small amount, the residents. But I'm looking at this cash balance, and your projection is to grow to 1.7 in 2029. Help me understand why the bond retirement balance would grow over those years. It's just the mechanics of that.
Because our portion, to your point, of pure GO debt is going down.
Right. So why would if it's going down, why would the retirement fund balance grow?
Because the real estate revenue is still there.
So this is, okay, got it. So this has both the I'm calling it the assessment debt, which the residents pay based on sewer improvement, right? And city debt.
Mhm.
And so what you're saying is the city debt is steadily going down because we're paying off bonds we issued years ago and not issuing new ones because we don't
Right.
need to. So the assessment debt, so this, okay. Is that how it should, but if our
That's
debt,
how it works, but we could talk more offline.
yeah, okay. Is there, yeah. Just, it would seem intuitively that it should be going down too. Because the city debt's going down, right? That's
Yeah.
my intuitive
Yeah,
lapse here. All right, we can talk about that. Okay. I'm up with page 25. I have nothing. Anyone else? Okay, now the real discussion starts.
I have,
Aren't you glad you're here?
This is great.
I have a sheet on the Capitol if anybody wants to see it.
Sure.
I could just read it.
Pass it up.
There's not a lot on it.
Oh, thank you.
So Joe, I think we probably should just go to look at Tony's thing and also go to the,
well, you skip page 26.
yeah,
27 really has nothing, and then go to
Yeah,
the 6
just-
pages of capital.
yeah, exactly. That's what I'd
That'll
like to
tie
do.
to Tony's sheet.
Exactly. So just a question on page 27. The contingency capital project fund, that is just we tuck some money away for emergencies, right? And that's just gonna sit there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully we won't have that emergency that
Yeah, let's
We hope not.
dissipates that.
Okay, yeah, so let's just go to starting with police on page 1 of
I
the
just
capital
want to
budget.
make a general question or statement. I think it would really be helpful to evaluate the proposed capital budget if we had the history, like you do with the
Mm.
operating budget, like for the 3 years. It would be helpful to have those numbers.
The projects change every year.
Understand.
So you can't compare anything.
I understand that, but we know what totals we're spending in the various areas. So that's
So you want like
a bench.
a subtotal basically line, or you want line
I'd like-
item, all the line
I'd like to
items.
see.
Hmm,
You know what I mean?
line items would be tough.
Yeah.
Right.
So like, do you want just like at the bottom, the police department subtotal, would you just like a couple years of history of the subtotal? Or do you want it?
Well, let's
more
start,
detail.
start with that.
Yeah.
The police department, they tend to have the same things.
Mhm.
Yeah,
In the infrastructure, we have different
Right.
projects.
I went back and did exactly what you're talking about, Jackie. So the last 3 years, just so everyone knows, is 22 was 1.2, 23 was 0.4, 24 was 0.1
So
You
really
okay,
all over the
please?
board.
for police.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just wrote those
Tell me
in.
those numbers again.
I did it for that purpose. So 1.2,
22, 1.2,
0.4,
0.4,
0.1.
and 0.1. Okay.
So that's 22,
Tony, on
23.
page 26, that's where Jim's getting those numbers.
26.
Well, I had last year's budget, so I went back and
Oh,
looked at it.
so I guess this begs the question, what do we spend that got us up to 1.2 in 22?
Well, that would be your police renovation. Every
Oh,
year, if
okay.
you take these sheets from
Okay,
every
no,
year,
fine.
you'll be able to track.
I got it. Yeah, I mean, but that would be useful. It just seems like an outlier because I'm not thinking about everything that we've done for 12 years. And when.
Right, I understand your point, and I understand Joe's point that because capital things particularly fluctuate year to year, the comparative year to year,
Yeah, it's not as
It's not really
consistent as the
informative.
Yeah,
operating,
like
but
if there was some accompanying narrative maybe that talked about like the variances, I don't know.
Hi,
So-
Steve.
I'd like to, if I could, I'd like to report to council that the Charter Review Commission is soliciting the input of the Finance Committee and the treasurer on making the fire levy permanent and a part of the charter.
okay, well, we can't do that right now.
I
Steve.
understand. So I don't know if you can do it at the end of this meeting or Monday.
We'll do it some other time, but not now.
Because the finance committee would like some pizza now as we're getting later. But we're not gonna get that either.
You read my mind, Joe.
I know.
All right, so I have,
Wishes were horses, right?
I have nothing on page 1 for police department capital improvement fund, and nothing else.
I don't either.
So I'm up to page 2, which is fire department, and I have,
Oh, the one question I had about the police department, just general knowledge to help keep everything in perspective. How long do we generally keep police vehicles in service?
We rotate them every few years, basically every
Well,
3 years.
Every 3?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's based on mileage or age?
Mileage.
Mileage.
Primarily,
Okay,
and then they pretty much mileage wise reach the same point.
Yeah.
A certain amount of
do
time.
we track their repair history to see if we can get rid of the lemons?
We haven't had that issue.
Okay,
Yeah.
But repairs are trash.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, but I mean, if we had one that was
Right.
really bad, we could get rid of it.
And semi-recently, we had a really bizarre one where we had an accident on 271 that took out 2 of our vehicles.
Brand new. One of them.
Last year.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah, I remember.
I mean, literally, beginning of last year, January 1.
But we had insurance for that, correct?
Yeah.
Right, but that
It
changes
changes the
when you're
schedule.
gonna buy a
Right,
new one.
sure,
Yeah,
yeah.
they're gonna give us the proceeds, but we still gotta go out and buy a new one.
Yeah, it changes the schedule.
Chief, has there been any difference between the Chevrolet versus the Ford? In terms,
So far, no real difference. They've worked out well. And service hasn't had any issues with them.
on to fire. So fire department levy
Stop
fund,
throwing things around, Tony.
Because it's a complicated thing.
Tony, do you have a question?
The only question I had there, and that's kind of for historical purposes, it seems to me it might be better, I'm convinced the other way, that the pumper, which is put under public lands and fire department, should just be in the fire levy fund and transfer the money there to cover it. Just because historically, somebody may be looking for that, and they might not think to look in the general fund.
I have I had the same question. Why is that under public lands and buildings?
Because it's coming from the general fund.
It's, well, the revenue's coming from the general fund,
Mm.
transferred to the capital project fund, because it is a capital line item. But the fire levy is not in that kind of great health that it could absorb that type of cost.
Yeah. And it's not designed to
No,
cover
unfortunately,
those things.
in a lot of communities, whether it's a squad, whether it's a pumper, whether it's a ladder truck, they're going out for debt with that. We have the advantage of buying it all with cash,
Right,
but the fire levy fund does not have the cash.
right. So in the future, to fund the fire department, when we use, at some point, have to use general fund revenues, do we have to create a parallel fire capital fund to fund it, or can that money go into the levy fund?
It could go in a levy fund.
Okay, so we just have to, so we, today, if we wanted to, we could add general fund revenues into the fire levy fund and then move the pumper truck into that so that.
And I'm just saying for historical purposes,
Yeah.
20 years from now, somebody's looking, when did we buy that pumper?
Yeah,
And then they could find.
I think
Say
mechanically,
the problem also with these pumpers is the lead time.
Is what?
It's lead time.
Lead time.
It's 3 to 4 years. We're gonna do the encumbrance, so I've gotta have the money.
yeah,
But it might take a good 3 to 3.5 to 4 years to actually take possession of that vehicle.
yeah. How old is the current one, Chief?
Next year it'll be 20 years old,
20.
yes.
Wow.
So if we bought it today, it'd be almost 25 years old when it's delivered.
Wow. And is that typical for fire vehicles that may have a long life like that, just because they're not on the road every day? And
Yeah, 20 years is, I would say, pretty consistent with
Pretty
most
consistent.
departments, yeah.
and then what will happen? Can we auction the old one? Do people still want 25-year-old fire trucks?
The last one we sold, I think we got $1,500 for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's not a big market,
Market,
especially from this area because of the salt and
Yeah.
corrosion issues.
okay.
It looks cool on the front lawn of a fraternity house. if they want.
And ironically, in the last place that I worked, we actually had a fire lover guy who had a lot of land. He would buy old stuff like that that barely worked and
Correct.
had it in his yard.
A fire museum?
Yeah.
All right, I have nothing else on that. I'm up to, so on page 2, the fire department for levy fund. Joe, Chief, next year, 350,000, that's just, when you call it a remount, that is putting the box on the truck or,
Yeah,
Yeah.
putting the box on a new chassis,
okay, on a new chassis, that's what we're buying?
Yes.
Okay,
so same box.
okay. And that vehicle is how old these days? Same kind of
It's,
thing?
yeah, it's not that old, but it's a little problematic.
That one's, we got that just before COVID, right? Is that the one we got just before COVID? So maybe 2 years prior to COVID,
So 2018-ish?
2018?
So actually, might be a little bit earlier than that.
Between 16 and 18.
Yeah.
That normal useful life for that? Or we had issues?
I think probably in 7 years on a chassis, on like 7 or 8
Yeah.
years. So it might be a little bit early, but the chassis has been a little bit
Yeah,
problematic too.
It's
We
been.
had problems with it. so-
Yeah, it was pre-DEF, but electronically, they tried to control for DEF. So we've had a lot of computer problems.
Okay. Okay. I'm
Dan,
up-
yeah,
I'm up to
are you
page-
still on 2?
Mhm.
I'm just curious, the striker cot and load system,
I'm sorry, which system, Scott?
striker cot and load system, it's for
Yeah.
2026.
Right.
Yes.
And then you've got the bay floor coating for 2026 as well. I'm just curious, those are fairly large expenses.
Yeah, so the floor is, the bay floor is 50 years old.
Okay, so it just needs redoing, huh?
Yeah, we're hoping that that'll help some longevity. The floor, you'll notice the floor drains are, the service department's gonna help us next year on that. Those are pretty much rotted out.
Hmm.
Also, between that and the floor coating, we're hoping we can extend that floor length.
Hmm. Okay.
And the cut and load system, that's for the ambulance. It's a striker unit. It actually lifts the cot up and then loads it into that.
Do you have one now?
Yes,
So this
those
is
are replacement.
replacement. Okay, thank
Is that
you.
what the R means, replacement?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be helpful throughout the list, you know, on the other pages too, whether it's replacement or new item.
I'm up to, anyone else on that?
No.
Page 3, I have no comments.
I have one question. For 2026, we have the splash pad in there,
Where are you?
2026,
2026,
Page 3.
Splash pad.
page 3.
Oh, this was the conversation where we wanted to change, or I think this might have been a year ago. You guys were asking to change it to just park general.
Renovation, yeah.
And I believe Mayor wanted to keep it listed as splash pad. So since we've engaged with MKSK, it seems like that probably makes sense to get rid of the splash pad and just, you know, Pepper Pike Park redesign or something like that, right?
We can describe it. I don't have a
Yeah.
problem with that.
Okay.
I just wanted to point out to sort of coincidentally that the CDC in the last couple of days released a public park splash pads linked to thousands of waterborne disease cases. Just, I'm, if we get to the splash pad issue, I think we.
I saw that article. That is very problematic.
It is.
And I think Dr. Wang had brought that to our attention at one point early on.
I actually brought it up at the same time.
Oh, you brought it up. Actually, you shared that article.
It's
I'm
the,
sorry.
it's the perils of living with an infectious disease, doctor.
That, it was you. Okay, I knew it was some doctor. That's where it came from.
But it was broad-based, the issue.
Yeah.
It's parasites and bacteria and viruses and all sorts of things. No, I just,
But
We can recharacterize it. I just want to keep the number in for the park and.
Yep.
yeah, and also MKSK is going to come back with, who knows, maybe
Right.
some really fantastic, we've been happy with them. So
Right.
maybe they'll come up with some
Yeah.
really great ideas.
Page 4?
I had one there, and that's the roof replacement. I'm only asking that because we just recently, you know, redid the whole.
Oh, you're talking about the sewage?
Yeah.
I thought, because there was a roof spot in it. This is in the oldest part of the garage, that the roof was not done, there was no work done to it.
Okay.
It was projected out. Well, we just recently had a contractor go up there, our roof maintenance people. They were up there, they noticed many shingles broken off due to weather. And that now is the time when it's coming to, it was projected out during the renovation. And they said, just to handle it all.
Well, thanks
at
for
one time.
clarifying that, because I was under the assumption that the whole roof was done.
No, this is the part that's over the oldest part of the building, which is
Just
just three main garage doors facing the parking lot.
Just the shingle part is the issue, or
Uh,
the flat part?
It's just I believe it's just the shingled part.
Okay.
What do they call that? A Gambian roof or something like that?
The design, yeah,
Gamble
yeah,
roof.
yeah. Okay. So the other question is the tow behind storm sewer flusher?
Mhm.
What is, just describe what that is? and-
What we have is, we clean our catch basins. They all have crossover pipes. A flusher unit, we always basically beg Lyndhurst to come over and take care of ours because they have a combination flusher truck. Or we have to pay an outside source to do all our cleaning of any lines. So it could be done on lateral lines, be done on ditch lines, done on catch basin lines.
Yeah.
All storm sewer work that we do. It's upgrading, it's giving us the ability to do the work ourselves. We don't have that equipment. A combination truck's over 500,000. This is a tow behind unit.
So this pushes water,
It's a sewer jet.
it's a sewer jet?
It's
Okay.
a tow behind sewer jet.
Okay,
And
okay.
it's the same kind of jet as I think when you use at home, right? It's just on an industrial scale.
oh, hey, this is industrial scale, yeah.
But so now, right now, you have the vacuum part.
We have the vacuum part.
But you didn't have
We don't have the cleaning part
The
for the
cleaning part.
pipes, right? So if we had a case last week where a catch basin was blocked during all this rain event, and we ended up cleaning, we couldn't clean the pipe, and we couldn't get anybody there to do it, so it basically went all weekend without we gave it mild relief, but
Yeah.
it was more than just a cleaning of a catch basin, because the discharge pipe was full, so
So you
these
use,
are things to clean all these pipes.
so you would use it proactively, not just when it's blocked, or just?
Yeah, you could use you could go on a program, say, I'm gonna go and clean all the catch basins at Trillium, and I'm gonna do all the discharges
Same time.
at
What
the
do we,
same time.
do you know what we're spending per year for the outside services and?
Well, we
for,
don't really track how many, how much Lyndhurst costs. I would say that they're there probably 7-8 times a year. We call them on emergency basis. You know, we have a good.
Do we have to pay them?
No,
Oh.
but we do pay, generally it's United Survey, and it's around $2,500 a call. So it's not cheap. We try to get the most out of them while they're here. Say we do the emergency spot, and then we try to get 2 or 3 other spots in line.
So this won't be, this is a big capital cost, so it won't really, how long does this thing last?
I'm gonna figure it's gonna be
20 years, right?
15, 20 years.
Oh, that long?
Oh, yeah, it's,
Okay.
yeah.
So you can literally use this for 15 or 20 years?
Yeah,
This-
and I
we
mean,
do-
for the amount of time that, I mean, well, it's, the more you use it, obviously, the more
Sure.
wear it gets, but I can't see why it wouldn't last 15, 20 years.
Well, as you say, we could do preventive,
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
and so that's.
and we get a lot of
enhancing the
ditch
service.
line
I
work.
think that's the point, Tony.
Yeah.
Whereas our expenses we have to get one because we have a block. Now we can do it more.
And the service department is doing great work on keeping the water flowing, and this is just another way to help that. The only question or the only issue I had, I guess it would be there, is I would like to see somewhere in one of the years, not too far down, leaf pickup equipment. I think that we've talked about, doing leaf pickup, and that's something that we might want to consider. No?
Not,
You shaking
again,
your
a
head?
bigger conversation
No.
Yeah,
beyond today, but
Right.
absolutely a conversation.
but I
we
think,
can have.
that number should be within that 5-year.
Well, that involves staffing, storage, but we
Yeah.
can have a.
It's a bigger
standalone.
conversation. We
Yeah.
just-
There's a lot to that.
When you're gonna do it, it's gonna be a big commitment.
Yeah, well,
And it's not just an equipment.
yeah, we need to have the conversation.
That's good. Okay.
Page 5. So just lots of questions on all these. Mr. Sheehy?
Yes.
So just the pavement schedule for maintenance, do we have a list for 2025, or could you give us the list?
25,
the
Fairmount,
streets?
yeah, Fairmount and Gates Mills are the kind of the big ticket items. It's probably almost 2 million of that. And then we have,
2627.
yeah,
Okay, 2.6, 2.6 and 2, for those two?
no,
What in
combined,
total?
combined.
Okay,
And then we have streets that will be done after the sewer work is done on, Chatham, Brewster, the
Okay.
north, the next phase on the Shaker
sewer
Sand.
streets.
So.
And these are all mill and fill, or they're full replacement,
They're all mill and fills, yeah,
or? Okay,
yeah.
so that would, so those
We
two
got
streets,
Forest.
Yeah, Forest, Edgewood, there's like 7 other streets.
the sewer streets. that are-
Sewer streets, yeah.
Okay,
And we also continue to carry over east and west Brainerd,
Right.
waiting for Woodmere to.
But that's,
That's a
The
small
conjunction
amount.
project.
It's like a
It's
50
small.
grand. yeah.
okay. So that's normal, that's kind of your normal 5-year, just, those
Yeah.
streets are next on the list.
Right.
Okay,
And there's a couple that are big, Gates Mills, but we're also getting
we're getting a grant. for that.
800 grand from the county.
This-
Gates.
Your projection includes, is
I don't do the deduct. This is just the cost.
total cost.
yeah, the revenue's built in to receive 800,000,
We have that in
the capital project fund.
capital project fund revenue. Okay, great. And then my next, just the Shaker Boulevard Sewer Construction Phase 2. That's those streets we just talked about.
Right.
And that is, except for a small percentage of that, Joe, that's assessment going to be paid by the residents, except for our 2% ultimately, or whatever our percent is.
Mhm.
Intersections and 2%.
Right. So that will be, it's in our capital budget, but we'll, like everywhere else, we'll bond that out and put assessments in place for the 90-something%. of it.
Correct.
Right, okay. So that's not, I mean, it's in our budget as a capital cost, but it's not, most of it is dollars we won't be paying. And then my next one is Gates Mill Trail Phase 2, where I assume we've heard nothing new on that.
We've gotten no feedback, but that's
But that's
kind
going to
of
be
normal.
offset by some grant money.
Right, we're hoping that we can get, close to $500,000 in grant money and other sources.
So more to come on that. then.
More to come.
And then we have built in the Chagrin, at least for next year, I'm looking for 2026, Chagrin Lander Circle reconfiguration. I know that's something that's been around for a long time. We haven't had, I mean, you're building that in, I guess, why 2026? And we need, at least from my perspective, we need a lot of work to understand the wheres and whys and what's of that. So I don't
Well,
mind.
Can you give us a big picture, like what?
Well, it would be, I think we will have a placeholder there for what that approximately would cost to, reconfigure, add islands, add pedestrian access, maybe close off some of the access points. It's a pretty big discussion, but
It's
I
a
think,
big project.
but
yeah.
that chunk, I think we wanted to have a realistic number, what it would actually take to do
Okay.
a lot of those things.
So sometimes next year, you're going to have a
We'll-
full up
we'll
plan.
end up
And
figuring-
have you been authorized to do the preliminary drawings or whatever? for-
We've done a preliminary, that's sitting right now.
Sitting there.
We haven't been authorized to do any other.
Okay, so at some point during next year, we'll come to council and we'll have
That's
that big discussion.
Yep.
Okay.
Because that was on my list also. I don't know
Yeah.
if anybody else. That was on my list. I just have some concerns. I've seen it over the years. I've seen the drawings. And I have a concern. I know the intention, a big part of the intention was to move traffic. And I don't know if that's the priority of the city should be as to something like that. I would think aesthetics and maybe safety or walkability for the community. And, I just had a lot of concerns because the idea was, when I heard it, I remember, and that was way back when, they were anticipating possible project on the Beachbrook land, that this would help move the volume of traffic. I don't even know if the volume of traffic is the same as it was pre-2020, but in any case, I don't know if it falls within the community's priorities. And so that's just I would love to have a more thorough discussion about whether we even want to do this.
I agree with that completely. It's okay to have a placeholder, but I think we can defer
Yeah.
that till the John.
And also the
John-
purchase of land that would be related to
Right.
it in the complex of that.
We need to have a big conversation on that.
Not to interrupt, but I think that we've discussed that at least for some time in the infrastructure
Yes.
committee, and we should bring it back up and people can attend that, assuming,
No,
depending on who's
correct.
on infrastructure next year.
No, that is correct. We
Yeah,
did
we've
talk
talked,
about
we've
that.
talked about it there.
And it is as we've said for the last several years, we already know, that's a real tricky one.
It's
Yeah.
a real tricky one. And it could be different from what we thought.
Oh, yeah, especially with the change in Beachbrook and all that, yeah. Yeah. But definitely needs talking about, yeah. Agreed.
Kind of the same thing for, in my mind, Lander to School Connector Road. That's kind of, I know you have that out in the future, but it's another one that we need a lot of talk about to understand the wheres and whys. I don't know if we need to do that today, but
No,
understand that's a-
it's
that's a
beyond our
point.
meeting today.
yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I
Since
second
no pizza's
that.
coming, we can defer that.
I second
Right.
that. I think the school
Right.
needs to really be in conversations about whether that's a good idea for them.
And then we have 2 sidewalks. Right, so this is what we talked about at the last meeting that, John, you're preparing. Preliminary
We're working
plans
on
for
the
design plans,
preliminary.
right. And then the next one you have out in 2027, another sidewalk.
Are we close to having the numbers on Lander yet? Do you think we'll have them for the December?
I can
18th
give
meeting?
you close numbers. We won't be closed on the contract because there's still some punch list things and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But real quick, Lander Trail, also including the additional work we did on Lander,
Which was like 140.
was about 140. We're about 140 under budget.
But I don't remember what I thought it was.
About 966 plus 140. we're gonna be at about 966 total spent. So we're
Okay.
in good shape on that one. And also just while we're talking about them, Gates Mills Boulevard Trail, not the landscaping, just the trail. Looks like we're gonna be about 100,000 under budget on that too.
And the number you're giving us, is that all in? Does that include engineering and?
This is
construction?
just the
Just the
construction
construction,
contract.
okay.
So what I think, the last council meeting, we had a brief discussion about phase 3 sewers, which is what, South Woodland?
South Woodland, yes.
And that's not in here. Do you have should we be projecting that for?
We will be. We have a grant that we're supposed to be getting from Regional Sewer District.
Okay,
That information will be legislation, I think in January. They'll submit that, which will have a
Jim,
time.
it is in without a name right now.
where is it?
You
It's in
see the
here?
line at 1,750,000, that's just a placeholder?
Where is it?
Septic conversion
Septic conversion
projects.
projects?
Yeah.
That's what that is. Okay, that was a separate question I had. Okay. Got it. Okay. So you call it septic. Okay. So that will be phase 3. And then what's 28 and 29 then? Is that
Placeholder.
placeholder for other sewer projects?
Right, potentially, right.
Got it. Okay. And then, so I'm good. That's all I had on that page. And then just a question on the next page, total culvert and sewer maintenance and repairs. And that's on page 6. Anything, just the 350 for Edgewood Forest? What's going on? Is that?
Yeah, that, as part of these sanitary sewer projects, we often end up having to clean up other issues that are going on with the storm sewer system.
Okay.
It is the appropriate time to pick up those problems. And
Because you're there.
yeah, Forest and Edgewood in particular had a lot of issues, and Concord Plymouth has some. So we have those storm sewer improvements being done while the sanitary sewer project is being done, but it's a separate cost.
Do you know, and are those actual numbers
Yeah,
about,
those
okay,
are
so you've done an assessment, you know,
Well, we haven't awarded the project, but the design is done, and those are
based on what you know are issues and
Right,
problems. Yeah,
right.
okay. It's not a complete replacement, it's picking
It's a partial. Yeah.
partial replacement, okay. All right, that's all I had.
That's the last page.
I have one other issue to talk about if we're going to vote on this at all.
Yeah.
Charlie, this would be a dangerous thing. I think we don't have all that we need to pass this budget. But from what the charter calls for. There are a number of things that are called for by the charter that we don't have yet. So it would be my suggestion to table the vote until we have the rest of the items that the charter calls for.
These are financial projections called for by the charter.
Right, the charter provision regarding operating budget, capital improvements, and financial forecast is the second page. The first page is where I'm saying what we do or do not have. So under number 3.
So what, your first page is right from the charter, language right from the charter,
The second page.
second page?
Yeah.
Okay,
The first page is things that we are required and in some cases haven't been provided. Number 1D, a summary of the contents of the operating. There's no charter written summary that's been provided. Part 2A requires a list of capital expenditure, estimated cost of each improvement, and proposed established method of financing. Method of financing for listed projects has not been provided. And then on number 3 is the mayor to submit a written message to council accompanying. You can read that whole thing, and we don't have that message. So, for the sake of our residents and to be complete and comply with the charter, I'd like to have those items provided before we vote, if that's possible.
Tony, are some of these items encompassed within
No,
what we've got?
no, they're not.
Well, number 4, that part 2.
Yeah.
A list of capital expenditures
Mhm.
for we just went through 6 pages of that.
We have that, but the method of financing for the listed projects is not provided.
We're not financing.
No, yeah, we are.
Fund-
We're
funding.
fighting, we have grants.
Well, funding is different than financing. No, the financing, I think where they were going with that, but maybe I'm wrong, was are you gonna lease it?
Issue bonds.
Are you gonna issue bonds or notes?
No, financing is where the money is coming from. Is it coming from grants? Is it coming from the general fund? It's where the money is coming from in the,
But I think
in
we
the
went through
general
that with
sense.
every piece of this. There's
But-
not an item on this that I have a
But we-
question of how it's being
we-
funded.
we don't have a report that shows that. I think that it all needs to be in one place.
Well, this requires a list of capital expenditures. We got that.
Right.
Estimated cost, got that. Proposed or established, and the proposed or established method of financing.
Right, and that's what's missing. We should
Well,
have
see,
that.
I would take financing as outside funding.
I agree with
Mhm.
that.
I don't agree with that. I think you're saying where the money is coming from, whether it's internal funds or grants or assessment bonds
But
or
don't we have
whatever.
that on our revenue? It says, here's, in.
Again, it's not in one place. I was envisioning this as being a report. It's not a huge ask to have that. But I'm uncomfortable passing the budget until we have some of these other things. And the mayor's written message,
Well, let's just get through this. So I think I disagree with on method of finance. To me, that's, I'm going to issue bonds to get this done. That's how I would read financing as a word.
okay,
So you and I just disagree on it.
well, yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah. okay.
So let's just go through the rest of them because I want to just be clear. So just the top one. No, number 1, among others, requires among others, presentation of aggregate projected or negative cash flow and the projected impact on year-end surface. We have that, do we not?
I don't think so.
I
Why
think
not?
we do.
I mean, that's
The 5-year
what the
budget
statement
shows that.
is, right? That's what the budget is.
What are we missing?
It doesn't show, I don't know where we see the negative cash flow or positive cash flow and projected impact on year-end surplus. I'm looking for some words. We have a lot of numbers. We have a lot of data.
Narrative or
I'm
a
looking
chart.
for some words that we could supply to the, put on the website that people can see what we're doing in words and not only 25 pages of numbers.
And we have a 3-hour meeting that's recorded they could watch if they were so inclined.
Well, I've seen other,
Don't think that that's
seen
that's
other
doing a good job
entities.
for our
You don't, I mean,
residents.
we went through it line by line by line. If someone
I
really
don't-
wanted to dig in, if I was a resident who cared enough to dig in line by line, I would watch the meeting because we went through every line that we had a question of.
I've
If
seen
I
in
were,
other
ex-
budget.
let me,
Go
let
ahead,
me,
sorry,
let
Tony.
me, you can go ahead. If I were a resident and I wanted to kind of know the status of the finances of the city,
Mhm.
I'd want to be able to go to the website and see a statement that tells us what what's a statement of the status of the city is. It's easy to understand rather than having to go through 25 or 27 pages of data and a 3-hour recording. I think that we owe it to our residents to have a nice verbal summary. It's not a long document, but it's a document that should be there. It's required by the charter, and I don't see that we've done a good job of providing that, if we've provided it at all.
Well, we have, on each of the funds, we have impact on the fund balance for each fund. So we know where the cash in the fund is going up or down. Doesn't that, I mean, putting aside the narrative, I understand your narrative point, that's different. But the data is there, right?
The data is there, but funds don't mean anything to the general public. It's what are we doing as a city, irrespective of the funds. The funds are a legal requirement. We're not telling them what we're doing with all of this data. I think that we need to distill the data down and have a narrative that goes with it. So I'm personally uncomfortable passing the budget until we have these other items that the charter calls for.
So let's just go through the rest of them. So part 2, a schedule of proposed expenditure for each department.
On a monthly basis.
Well,
We don't have that.
Joe has that. You have that, Joe? Monthly basis?
But
of proposed going forward, like
Yeah,
what we're gonna do in the month of December?
No, it says schedule the proposed expenditures for each department on a monthly basis, subject to guidelines approved by council. We have not been provided that. We have the we have the annual numbers.
We never have, ever.
Yeah,
Since this thing was adopted 13 years ago or whenever,
And
that's never occurred.
we're looking at the charter and this is something that we're supposed to be doing. When I first looked at the charter, there were a number of things that we were called upon to do and we're not doing.
I
And
don't even know if that's possible to do it on a monthly basis.
well, the people who, Jim was one of them, who created this charter.
that one we
amendment.
don't have. I agree with you. We don't have that. The question is, and I guess Joe could divide every month by 12 and give us a number. I'm not sure how helpful that's.
right, it's meaningless.
I
Well, if we
understand.
have a list of the expenditures,
It's called for in the charter.
I
Whether it's
agree.
meaningless or
Still,
not, it's
it's-
called for.
No, you're right. You're
Yeah.
right. We don't have that. And I think that's a charter amendment opportunity for sure.
but having a list of the expenditures in one place is not such a bad idea. Whether we need to tie them to a month.
But we have all the expenditures list right
Well,
here.
I know, but in one report, like here's our expenditure, upcoming capital expenditures. Here, and yeah, well, we can go to the next one. But I do think it's a good, I mean, I understand that somebody could go through this and then come in and ask questions. A lot of things are buried under larger topics, Okay.
Well, I prefer to think they're contained within larger.
Oh, not be,
topics. I
okay,
don't think they're
contained.
buried.
They're not intentionally buried, they're contained, but it's opaque. You don't know what's in some of these catch-all things.
I think we're living with the charter we have. You're right, it's an opportunity for a charter amendment.
Yeah.
And I think that should happen. However, this is the charter we have, and I think that we need to comply with it, even if we haven't complied with it for the last 12 years or 13
Yeah,
years.
Tony, I actually agree with you on this.
We've agreed on other things.
No, I mean, well, as opposed to many other people who don't seem to agree with it. No, I think you're right. It's the letter of the law and we should abide by it. And the fact that you didn't just discover it until just recently, I think,
We will have I don't know how we're going to do the monthly, frankly. I really don't know how that monthly physically occurs on any practical or realistic basis. I just have to, I'm not trying to bury something or hide it. That is simply not a planning mechanism that has ever been looked at. But no, I can give you a statement. The other stuff will.
Joe and I can have a conversation, or
Make
Joe and
references,
Jim and I
I
can have a
guess.
conversation
But it
on how
doesn't
we
work.
might be able to provide that monthly thing in a reasonable manner.
With
We don't-
Scott and Tony's comments, I don't think we're going to be able to pass this today, so that's what we're going to do.
Well, let's.
And we have
let's
time.
take a-
We don't
let's
have to
take a second
pass.
and talk about exactly what we're gonna do. If we're gonna do something. So the next one, just Tony, so I understand you. Summary of the contents of the proposed. So that's a narrative of what your part 3, right? Number 3?
Yeah.
You're suggesting that's a narrative.
A narrative summary, narrative
a
summary.
narrative something, right?
Yeah.
And then part number 4 is list of capital expenditures, an estimated cost of each above improvement. So we have the list of capital expenditures. We had an estimated cost. Well, that's the same thing, right? This was not greatly drafted. And then a proposed or established method of financing. My view again is financing is
I think we did that.
outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I disagree.
Okay, well, we can reasonably disagree over that one.
Yep.
And then the last one, written message to council. Well, I understand coming out of what we came out of with our near bankruptcy, why that's there. Because we were, when you and I were, and you were kind of fighting and why did we have a bankruptcy? We wanted more of a better explanation of the cash flow. So I get why it's there. Looking at it now, there's some value to having a narrative that just, even if it's 3 pages long, that says,
It's going to be 3 pages long.
no, a narrative on big buckets. Revenues are up.
Executive summary.
Expenses are consistent. Here's the big, it could be summary, Because you don't want it 50 pages, right? You
No
want
one's
it,
gonna read it.
No,
you
I'm,
want this, you want something that the public will say, okay, I want a snapshot of the budget. And I think that's what part 3 was in.
number 5, part
Number
3.
5
Yeah, part 3.
was just let the public know in general how things are going.
Well,
I think the argument at the time was if Mayor Akers and his finance director had done that, it would alerted, conceivably alerted the public that something is amiss here because cash reserves were dwindling rapidly.
I think looking at that paragraph, to me, it is a very short message. It seems to be what basically Joe explained at the beginning, simply saying this is a zero-based budget, the way it was constructed. And that it is, the projections are conservative in nature. That is our financial policy, basically, to zero-based budget and to make conservative estimations so that we're not caught short at the end of the year. And describing some important features of the operating budget and capital improvements program. That, okay.
Some bottom line type of stuff.
I mean, Mayor,
It's like
these
this is like a long paragraph.
are the kind of messages that you can probably whip off in no time.
The message I'm not very worried about. This monthly thing, I don't know.
I think we
I
can,
don't know how it.
I think we can figure out a way to comply with that will not be too burdensome. I haven't thought about it a lot, but let me think about it.
But just in looking at this, what makes it say that it's a narrative?
It says written,
It says a statement.
it says a written
Well,
message.
and what we did, we provided financial statements versus a narrative.
I think what was intended was a narrative,
In which one? Number,
a written message.
Just think
A
number
written message
5.
is
I
a
think
narrative.
that's
Yes.
right. It's narrative,
Yeah,
definitely.
it's a narrative.
And as to number 4, I just wanted to say one thing. I think we're getting hung up on the word financing because the first part just says requires a list of capital expenditures and estimated cost of each improvement. And I'm assuming I don't know, doesn't the software code it? Can't we generate?
I think that's what's in the budget, though.
I
That
know, but
is the budget.
a separate, like just running list of capital expenditures, maybe instead of, I don't know, what's capital,
Yeah, I don't understand.
I don't know, that's
I mean,
my.
it's placed in the capital fund, but it's not coded separately that it's capital.
They're not coded.
And it belongs to it gets charged off the capital because that's where the money's budgeted.
I think 4 is done. I think we did 4 in the budget that is presented, that we've talked about all morning.
Well, I would just think that would be generated by, when we have an expenditure, it's not coded as a capital expenditure when,
Coding, these are words on a page. This is not coding or
well, I just
counting
thought that would help
entries or
generate a list.
anything like that.
That could generate a list and numbers were tied to each
So, yeah, it's a list.
expenditure.
I think we have a list.
So I think number 1, in my
And
view,
we need to add a column to it.
yeah, number 1 is done. Number 2, we don't have monthly. Number 3, a summary of the contents of the proposed budget. I think the number 3, what do you envision for number 3, Tony? A summary of the contents of the proposed budget? Is that different than the mayor's statement? What does 3 look like?
I think that that's duplicative of what's part 3 requires.
Except
Number 5
maybe,
is.
maybe some charts, I don't know.
Number 3 and number
Maybe
5, I think,
software generate-
are pretty much duplicate
Duplicative.
each
I
other.
would
Yeah.
agree. They could be part of the same thing.
But couldn't the
So I think
software-
we have 1. I think we have 4. We don't have 2 for sure because we don't have monthly, which is, in retrospect, of course, we never should have included monthly. It's just not-
I didn't write it.
But just as an example, and I don't know what the report should look like, but couldn't the software generate, for example, a revenue pie chart? Like this is for the community. It's not necessarily for us. I don't know. I'm just saying like this revenue comes from this source, this revenue, fire levy, I don't know, just something user friendly for the community.
Not atypical of what some cities might put in their annual reports. So I'm just calling it to our attention that I think that this has been something that we haven't done. We're remiss in not doing it. And I would feel better about passing the budget if we took a shot at doing this.
I think it also is for the Charter Review Commission, is to make sure there are definitions of things like financing, because that is very, it's very ambiguous.
And I think that they're just about to get to this article, so
I think financing is
we
financing.
can give them input.
I just looked at a bunch of definitions online and it's all over the place.
Okay.
It can mean where you're getting credit from, or it can.
I don't see the
paying-
problem, I'm sorry, Scott. I don't see the problem with putting down coming from internal funds. That's not a big deal. Or it's coming from internal funds, and it's coming from grants, and it's coming from debt.
Well, we have that in the budget, right?
Yeah.
It says grants, it says bonds.
But you have to look in two different places. I'm trying to get something that's in one place to understand the whole thing. I don't see it as an onerous task. As Jackie says, the mayor can knock this out in one paragraph in
Easy for her to say.
5 minutes.
This is what he tells me.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for volunteering him for that. I appreciate that.
All
But I
right.
think we
So
could
then
pass
we
the
come
budget.
back to this at our, just
I
at
think
our
we could
first
pass,
December meeting?
I think we could pass the budget either on the 18th or the 30th.
I am really uncomfortable waiting till the 30th. to pass it.
Well, then the 18th. I mean, it just depends on when these documents are done.
And just but the 30th, we need to reconvene, just to clarify, because Joe said that we need to
Yeah.
address.
24.
Okay, anything else this morning? We're adjourned.